Hey guys, picture this. You've spent 10 brutal years learning to glide like mist, smile like mystery, and hide 1,000 tiny foot cramps behind a fan the size of a dinner plate. Tonight, one wrong step in 6-inch wooden clogs could reduce your entire future to tea-pouring oblivion. Welcome to a geisha's first public performance, where perfection is mandatory and failure is legendary. Before you get comfortable, please hit like and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I do. Drop a comment telling me where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's dive together into today's journey. Dawn slithers through the paper shutters of the Okiya, the geisha boarding house that smells perpetually of rice glue, incense, and low-grade panic. Our heroine, let's call her Hana because anonymity is the only mercy she's been granted, lies stiff on a bamboo pillow designed by someone who hated necks. She hasn't actually slept. She's been rehearsing shamisen chords in her head, terrified she'll forget the difference between elegant melancholy and awkward buzzing string. Outside, the senior geiko are already awake, their whispers cutting through the corridor like silk blades. Who flubbed a line last night? Who charmed a daimyo into paying twice? Gossip is currency. Hana is flat broke. An attendant barges in with the emotional subtlety of a tax collector. Time for morning ablutions, which is fancy talk for a scrub until your soul squeaks. Cold water, harsh soap, no complaints. Geisha skin must glow like moonlit porcelain. Never mind the goosebumps the size of Mount Fuji. After that comes the hair session, a ritual equal parts artistry and medieval torture. The dresser heaps wax, camellia oil, and iron pins into an elaborate tower that could withstand a typhoon, or snap Hana's neck if she nods too enthusiastically. She stares straight ahead, practicing the geisha half-smile, alluring, inscrutable, and 100% masking the urge to scream. Makeup is next, and if you thought the concubine cosmetics were rough, welcome to stage 2 of historical self-erasure. First, binsuke abura, a sticky wax base rubbed on like unsolicited kindness. Then layers of rice powder so white she could freelance as a no mask. The nape of her neck is left in a delicate W-shaped gap, scandalous by Edo standards, equivalent to flashing an ankle on Victorian Twitter. Crimson paste traces her lips into a smaller Poutier version of themselves, because apparently mature women should look like mischievous dolls. And yes, the teeth blackening ritual, ohaguro, awaits, a metallic brew that tastes like blood and misery but announces marital status, or in Hana's case, professional dedication. She swishes, she grimaces, she vows never to smile with teeth again. Breakfast, a bowl of rice, pickled plum, and existential dread. She eats in silence while the house mother lectures her on tonight's patron list. A minor daimyo with major expectations, a wealthy silk merchant who thinks every geisha secretly wants to marry him, and an elderly poet famous for rejecting compliments. Hana's job: charm all three without favoritism, steer conversation away from politics, and never let any man believe he owns her, even though he basically rented the evening. Simple. Finally, the kimono gauntlet. Underlayers, inner robes, padded collar, outer robe woven with flying cranes that cost more than most peasants will ever see, and the obi, an embroidered boa constrictor cinched until she can't remember what lungs feel like. Add 6-inch okobo clogs, mini wooden skyscrapers, for that graceful floating effect. Spoiler, floating is a lie. It's a physics experiment in balance and public humiliation. Afternoon rehearsal at the tea house. The room is polished wood, tatami, and solemn expectation. Hana kneels, tuning her shamisen, while the senior geiko critique her like strict aunties disguised as living art. Strum cleaner, posture straighter, neck angle exactly 15 degrees humble, 5 degrees mysterious. She practices fan dances where every wrist flick must whisper poetry. Drop your elbow and you'll look like a carp flopping on shore. Unforgivable. Sweat beads under her collar. Rice powder cracks microscopically. She smiles wider. Break time means kneeling in the corridor. Sitting is too dangerous for the kimono's folds. Sipping lukewarm tea that tastes of reheated fear. A trainee maid scuttles by, eyes round with envy. Hana remembers being that girl, scrubbing floors while dreaming of silk. Reality check. Silk is less comfort, more contract. Twilight drapes Kyoto in gold. Lanterns ignite, shadows stretch. Patrons arrive thick with sake confidence. The tea house madam lines the gate go by seniority. Hana is last, a fledgling among peacocks. She listens to the merchant boast about his new warehouse, the daimyo brag about his hawk, the poet compare the moon to fleeting sorrow because originality is exhausting. Small talk is combat. Every phrase must sparkle but not outshine. Hana deploys tactical laughter, soft, musical, not a cackle, while discreetly replenishing the sake so no one notices they're already tipsy. At last the hostess signals, debut performance. Hana glides to the tatami stage, legs trembling but invisible beneath 50 pounds of brocade. She bows, deep enough to show humility, shallow enough to preserve spinal integrity. Shamisen poised, she begins the opening chords of the classic piece, Sakura Sakura. Fingers dance, mind sprints, heart threatens mutiny. She remembers the lesson. If a string snaps, keep playing. Panic is uglier than dissonance. Tonight the strings hold. Next, the fan dance. She rises, slow motion, courtesy of tight obi and vertigo, and unfurls a painted fan depicting petals in spring. Step, slide, turn, unfurl. Each movement timed to imaginary cherry blossoms drifting on wind. The audience leans in, captivated or maybe just drunk enough to blur mistakes. Hana's arms ache, ankles wobble on stilts, but adrenaline is a miraculous anesthetic. She completes the final pose, fan overhead, eyes lowered, and hears the sweetest sound, collective inhale, followed by polite applause. Not thunderous, but for a first-timer, it might as well be a standing ovation. Relief floods, then vanishes. The evening isn't over. Now she must circulate, pour sake, drop witty remarks like confetti, and fend off queries about her availability for private engagements. She deflects the merchant's wandering hand with a silk sleeve, praises the poet's latest metaphor, laughs at the daimyo's joke that isn't funny but is politically useful. Hours blur, smoke coils, shamisen strings hum in memory of calloused fingers. Near midnight, a senior geiko signals Hana to perform a duet. Improvised harmony, terrifying territory. They lock eyes, you lead first. Hana breathes, plucks a risky trill, and the elder answers with grace. Back and forth they weave a tapestry of sound, old experience guiding young nerve. When the final note fades, the room is hushed, then bursts into applause louder than before. Even the poet cracks a half smile. Somewhere in Edo, a star is born. The patrons drift off like embers on wind, pockets lighter, egos soothed. Hana bows them out, voice soft from endless politeness. Back at the okiya, she collapses onto tatami, hairpins rattling like fallen swords. The house mother appears, unreadable face, and nods once, a silent proclamation of acceptable success. Hana's lungs finally expand, yet sleep won't come. Behind closed eyes she replays every note, every step, cataloging errors invisible to outsiders but glaring to her. Tomorrow the standard rises, the training never ends. For tonight, though, she survived. She closes her eyes and feels the ache of muscles earning a new future. Morning does not arrive. It creeps in like a tax collector wearing socks. Hana wakes on the tatami, having managed 3 hours of sleep in one haunting dream about falling into a bowl of miso while still wearing her obi. Her neck crackles, her shoulders ache. Her soul gently weeps beneath 10 pounds of ceremonial guilt. The house mother is already awake, of course. She doesn't sleep. She waits to see who rises late, who shows weakness, who misfolds her bedding like a common street performer with no respect for linen hierarchy. Hana folds everything into crisp submission, then bows to the hallway just in case anyone is judging invisibly. Someone always is. She stumbles toward the washing basin, still dressed in her sleeping kimono, which is just formal enough to make drowning in it seem elegant. The water is cold, the towel is rough, tradition is unkind to pores. Another girl, a younger Maiko in training, whispers, "You were amazing last night." Hana smiles with her eyes and not her teeth, because they're still blackened, and she hasn't had the strength to reapply the iron sludge yet. Also, compliments are dangerous. They can inflate the ego, and inflated egos have a tendency to fall downstairs around here. Breakfast is rice again, with an aggressive pickled radish that reminds Hana of her mentor's smile. She eats exactly 2 bites and then stops, remembering that geisha are supposed to appear slightly ethereal, like ghosts with perfect posture and great skin. Being full is undignified. Being hungry is just another word for elegant. The house mother announces that today will be filled with errands and posture correction. Nobody cheers. There is no joy in errands, only tiny disasters waiting to happen in shoes made of outdated cruelty. Hana is assigned to accompany an elder geiko to deliver a thank you letter to the poet from the night before. The letter is handwritten, perfumed, folded just so. If it gets even slightly smudged or creased, a week's worth of public shaming will follow. Maybe longer if the poet writes a haiku about it. The streets are unforgiving. Hana's okobo clogs clack against the stone. It hasn't rained, but the air is wet with the scent of damp regrets and overcooked noodles. As they walk through the Gion district, eyes follow them. Not people. Eyes, floating, disembodied, full of judgment, all in low-key perversion. Being a geisha means being a walking contradiction. Admired, misunderstood, desired, and silently ridiculed by old men who wouldn't survive one day in silk. Children stare, women glance, men pretend not to gawk. Hata focuses on her breathing, in through the nose, out through the fan. Don't trip, don't blink too quickly, don't look directly at the dog who is also judging your hemline. The elder geiko delivers the letter with the gravitas of an imperial envoy. Hana bows 3 times, each one slightly lower than the last to indicate humility without desperation. Back at the Okiya, the house mother commends the performance with the highest praise available, a nod and no additional chores. This reprieve is short-lived. Soon it's rehearsal time again, because art never sleeps, and neither do performance critiques. Today's lesson, vocal poise. Translation, don't sound like a frog during conversation. Speaking as a geisha is a delicate operation. Your voice must be soft, like a falling petal, but not so soft you disappear entirely. You must sound interested, but never eager. Flirtatious, but not suggestive. Everything is suggestion, nothing is literal. If a man asks how your day was, he doesn't care. He wants you to answer in haiku, metaphor, or a sigh that implies longing for something that may not exist. The older geiko demonstrate. Their laughter is like rainfall over bamboo. Their voices barely stir the air. Hana tries. Her syllables fall out like damp laundry. She tries again, this time with a head tilt and faint smile. Better. Maybe. Then comes the shamisen review. Oh no. She holds the instrument like a lifeline and tries to remember which string says melancholy and which one screams oops. Her mentor listens, nodding only when absolutely necessary. Hana plays a short passage, a pause. The silence afterward is louder than anything she played. Then the mentor speaks. You are trying too hard. This is the worst insult, not failure, effort. You must let the notes breathe, the woman says, plucking a perfect phrase with 2 fingers and no apparent emotion. The music must feel like it came from somewhere inside you that you forgot was hurting. Ah, that place. Hana plays again. It's a little better. She's bleeding slightly from a splinter, but doesn't mention it, because only merchants complain. Artists suffered tastefully. That evening, there's a private gathering at the tea house. Hana is not scheduled to perform, but she must attend, hover, watch, and be ready to serve tea like it's an Olympic event. The older geiko command the room. Hana kneels quietly in the corner, taking notes with her face. One of the guests, a lord's nephew, glances her way. Not for long, not with interest, but just enough to send a ripple through the social pool. Later, someone will whisper, "He looked at you." The implication is everything. Did you look back? Did you look too long? Did you smile? Why? This world is a chess game with no board, only fans, glances, laughter, and vengeance disguised as compliments. After the guests leave, the tea house becomes a ghost town of spilled sake and crushed flower petals. The madam gives Hana an approving look, the second rarest thing in Kyoto, just after an affordable kimono. She says nothing, she doesn't have to. Approval here is silent, conditional, and always subject to sudden reversal. Back at the Okiya, it's foot care time. Hana soaks her aching soles in warm water while counting her emotional wounds. 1 per missed note, 2 for the hairdresser who muttered about her crooked bun, 3 for the compliment that felt like a trap. She dries her feet and remembers, no calluses, no rough patches. A geisha's heel must be as soft as her smile, even if both are weapons. Before bed, she practices her tea pouring again. She lines up 3 cups. Each pour is slow, deliberate, and silent. She times her breathing with the steam. This isn't hospitality, it's theater. Everything from wrist angle to eye contact is loaded with meaning. The wrong angle says clumsy. The right one says come closer, but no, I'm unattainable. She messes up the 3rd cup, swears internally, tries again. Finally, she sits in front of the mirror. Her face, still faintly powdered, stares back. The blackened teeth, the crimson lips, the perfect shell of performance. Inside is a girl who used to sing loudly in the rice fields. Now she sings softly in public rooms filled with men who believe performance equals affection. She doesn't hate them, not exactly. She just knows that while they're watching her act, they never see the full cost of the costume. She closes her eyes. Another day done. Another performance survived. Another inch climbed up the silk ladder of visibility. Tomorrow she will wake, rehearse, and repeat. Maybe someone will write a poem about her. Maybe someone already has. But tonight she is alone. And in the quiet dark, that feels like the only truth that belongs to her. Being a geisha isn't a career. It's a long, slow disappearance into artifice. By the 3rd day after her debut, Hana has become something not entirely human. Not quite divine either. Divinity gets bathroom breaks. She is now an object of grace, a poetic hallucination in silk, and an unpaid emotional support vessel for men who think moonlight and melancholy are foreplay. Today begins not with the usual basin of freezing water, but with a thunderclap, an invitation. The Lord's nephew, the one who looked at her for half a second while chewing fish, has requested Hana's presence at a private banquet. This is the geisha version of being catapulted into a shark tank with a flute and being told, play something dignified. The house mother delivers the news with the faintest quirk of the mouth. It's either pride or indigestion. Either way, Hana bows low, pretends to be honored, and hides the sheer terror behind her lashes. Private banquet equals no backup, no senior geiko leading the conversation, no crowd to disappear into, no room for mistakes, just her, the client, some minor nobility trying not to seem drunk too early, and an audience of silent servants judging the angle of her every pour. The preparation begins before sunrise. First, hair, not casual bun hair. No, this is sculptural masterpiece hair, a living topiary made from wax, pins, and centuries of beauty standards invented by men who never had to sleep sitting up. The hairdresser grunts as she stabs another ornament into place, a silver turtle to symbolize longevity, ironic given Hana's current anxiety, may shave 5 years off her lifespan. Next, the kimono. This one is not chosen, it is assigned. Cranes in mid-flight over gold thread clouds. Translation: youth, elegance, and the subtle reminder that Hana cannot legally own anything in this house, including the robe she's currently being sewn into. The obi is tied with particular brutality. It sends her internal organs a memo. Relocate or be crushed. Makeup? Same ordeal, slightly more aggressive. White powder, blackened teeth, lips like a minimalist plum blossom. Today she must look not merely geisha, but legendary. By early evening she is ready, or as ready as anyone can be while walking on stilts, starving, and about to be gently emotionally mauled for 3 hours. The banquet hall is quiet, refined, echoing with restrained wealth. Sliding doors, tatami mats, lacquered trays. A place where the rich pretend to be humble and the hired entertainment pretends not to be exhausted. Hana enters, bows deeply, and waits for the host to gesture. He does. She glides to her seat, legs folded perfectly beneath her. The room smells like incense and mild panic. The guests are all older than expected. The Lord's nephew, barely past 20, looks like a lotus flower raised in wine. Next to him, a middle-aged samurai sips his sake with the caution of someone who's been burned before, possibly by a former geisha, possibly by miso. Another guest, a scholar, leans in immediately to ask about her favorite waka poem. She replies with one. It's vague, elegant, uncomfortably sad, perfect. They nod, impressed. First hurdle, cleared. Then comes the drinking. The lord's nephew gestures for more sake. She pours, silently. He compliments her poise. She demurs. He jokes that she must have practiced on someone less important. She giggles, gracefully, musically, with just enough tension to imply, "I will destroy you if you touch my sleeve uninvited." Conversation flows like the wine, awkwardly and mostly in the direction of themselves. The scholar wants to know if geisha ever feel what they perform. The samurai wants to know if geisha can play real music, not just ceremonial fluff. The nephew wants to know if geisha ever get tired of smiling. Hana responds, yes, yes, and never, but all in metaphors, because direct answers are for peasants and accountants. At one point, the nephew leans in too close. Her perfume catches him like a net. He asks what she's thinking. She smiles and says that the sake tonight is very clear, like the heart of someone trying to hide. Everyone laughs. No one knows what she meant. That's the point. They ask her to dance. She rises, bowing, already calculating how to not slip on the polished floor while weighed down by enough silk to outfit a small parade. The fan opens. The music begins. A slow, delicate shamisen piece played by a servant behind the screen. Her movements are precise. Each flick of the wrist is rehearsed. Each pivot of the foot is calculated. She is not dancing, she is painting time. She sees the guests watching her, not as Hana, not even as a person, as an experience. This is the part of the night where she ceases to be real. By the time she returns to her seat, a sheen of sweat glazes her collarbones, hidden by powder, invisible under candlelight. But there, the banquet continues. Now the samurai wants a song, not just a song, his favorite. She doesn't know it, but she hums something similar. Hopes he doesn't notice. He doesn't. Second hurdle, survived. Eventually the meal ends. The guests drift out, satiated and slightly more poetic than when they arrived. The nephew lingers. He says she should perform for him again, privately, at his family's villa. There's no direct offer, no crass suggestion, just implication. And the implication is worse, because if she says no, she insults him. If she says yes, she risks being seen as available. She bows and says, perhaps, when the moon is next full, which is geisha code for only if I feel like it, and also never. He smiles, thinking she's accepted. She smiles, knowing she hasn't. Back at the okiya, she removes the makeup slowly, carefully, like shedding armor. Her face emerges pale, raw, real. She soaks her feet in silence. The water turns a little pink from pressure sores. She doesn't cry. She writes a poem instead. I smiled all evening. The plum wine kissed both my lips, but my soul drank air. She doesn't know if it's good, but she knows it's honest, and that's the rarest thing she owns. She folds the poem into her sleeve and goes to bed. Tomorrow she will perform again. Not for men, not for money, but for the ghost of the girl she used to be. The one who once thought being a geisha meant beauty. Now she knows it means endurance. And she's still here. Hana wakes before the bell, not out of eagerness, but because her spine has officially filed for separation from her body. Too many nights folded onto a mat. Too many days bound by silk and social expectation. Her dreams, when they come, are just flashbacks of etiquette drills and someone whispering, "Lower your gaze," directly into her ear for 8 hours. This morning, however, is different. Today marks the end of her Misadashi period, the probationary stage where a freshly debuted Maiko proves she can perform without face-planting or offending anyone's grandmother. If she survives today, she's no longer just new. She becomes established, meaning slightly less disposable. A status boost, essentially, like earning a third rice ball on your tray, one you're not actually allowed to eat. The house mother greets her with something that might be a smile, or gas. "You haven't disgraced the okiya yet," she says. "Well done." It is the most generous thing she's said all year. Today's performance will be her most public yet, a tea ceremony at the Kiyomizu Temple District, hosted for the patron who helped sponsor her debut. He is wealthy, he is particular. He believes geisha are living poetry wrapped in brocade and low-grade suffering, and he has invited everyone, daimyo cousins, tea masters, scholars, several other geisha who, incidentally, would love to see Hana trip into a koi pond. She is dressed before the sun finishes rising. The kimono, imperial blue with silver cranes, not the flashy debut colors. These say refined, elegant, and I no longer cry during hairpin fittings. Her face is powdered into soft ghostliness. Her teeth are inked like forgotten secrets. Her hands don't tremble, but only because she's holding a fan tight enough to cut circulation. She is driven by rickshaw, seated upright like a terrified statue. The streets blur by. Noodle vendors, temple bells, the scent of incense, the whisper of paper lanterns, arrival, bowing, doors sliding, slippers removed. She walks across the tatami so lightly she could be mistaken for a breeze with back pain. The room is elegant and terrifying. Guests sit arranged like polite predators. The patron is at the center, beaming, not at her, at the performance she is expected to deliver. Tea ceremony, the most sacred, symbolic, nerve-shattering experience of a geisha's career. Every movement must speak, silence, reverence, grace, humility, all conveyed through a wrist angle. She kneels, bows, begins. The cloth is folded with solemnity. The bowl is lifted like an offering. The tea whisk spins like a prayer. And inside, Hana is screaming, because her sleeve just dipped half a centimeter into the water bowl. No one saw. She hopes, but it happened, and it will haunt her. The tea is poured. She presents the cup. The guest accepts. He sips. He smiles. The patron sighs audibly. Relief or ecstasy, it's unclear. Hana bows again. Her legs are full of pins and needles. Her back is numb. Her jaw aches from serenity, but it is done. There is polite applause, the kind that says, "You met the minimum standard of spiritual excellence. Congratulations, you can now breathe again." She bows once more and exits the room, gliding like a plum blossom caught in a bureaucratic wind tunnel. Backstage, or what passes for backstage in a centuries-old temple, she collapses on her knees and mutters the sacred geisha mantra, "I need pickles and a nap." Later that evening, she returns to the okiya, utterly depleted but strangely buoyant. The house is quiet. The other Maiko eye her with something dangerously close to respect. One even nods. The house mother hands her a folded note. It's from the patron, a poem. The tea stirred like mist, and you, moonlight in my bowl, left my silence sweet. She considers being flattered. Instead, she files it away under future leverage. Now comes the final ritual, the official naming. A geisha name is not chosen, it is bestowed, part legacy, part brand, part mildly binding curse. Her mentor stands before her. "You will now be called Hanamitsu," she says. "Elegant blossom, slightly bitter, suits you." There is a small ceremony, a candle, a bow, a sip of sake she's technically too young to enjoy, but she drinks it anyway. The name is spoken. Her old self, the girl who fetched water and scrubbed rice pots, is officially gone. Hanamitsu has arrived. That night, she sits alone in her room, the oil lamp flickering shadows across the sliding doors. She unwraps her feet. The skin is red. One blister has formed the shape of a chrysanthemum, poetic if slightly infected. She leans against the wall and thinks of all she's survived, the endless rehearsals, the dance routines, the shamisen drills, the laughter that wasn't real, the compliments sharpened like knives, the blackened teeth, the silence, the expectation. She made it, barely. No one tells you how much it hurts, or how lonely it is, or how terrifying it is to be adored like a painting and never touched like a person. But there's power in it too. Geisha do not ask. They invite. They do not argue. They maneuver. They do not rebel. They endure. And Hanamitsu, has learned to endure with elegance. She stares at her reflection in the lacquered mirror. White face, red lips, black teeth, but in the eyes, something sharp, something that says, "You think I'm decoration. I'm actually the blade hidden in the kimono fold." She smiles, just a little, not enough to smudge anything, and in the distance temple bells ring midnight. She made it to the end of the beginning. Tomorrow it all starts again, but tonight she is no longer the girl who feared the room. She is the woman the room now fears. Picture the most Instagram unfriendly morning imaginable. Roosters screaming off key, chamber pots splashing onto cobblestones below, and a priest already warning everyone that vanity leads straight to hell. Welcome to girlhood in medieval Italy, where your future is decided by how fast your family can scrape together a dowry, and how convincingly you pretend not to have personal ambitions. You wake before sunrise because sleep is a luxury reserved for saints and dead people. Your blanket is a coarse wool rectangle that smells faintly of goat and aggressively of last night's smoke. Outside the wooden shutter, dawn oozes across the tiled roofs of Siena like watered-down wine. Your name is Giovanna, because half the girls in Tuscany are, and today you turn 7, which means exactly 2 things. You are now old enough to learn proper obedience, and the village midwife begins counting the years until your first bleeding, like she's timing a crop harvest. The first chore is sweeping the dirt floor, an activity so circular it should be a metaphor. The broom is a bundle of twigs tied with fraying twine. Every sweep raises a new dust cloud that settles exactly where the old one was, coating your ankles in beige despair. Mama bustles behind you, already muttering about your future husband, a hypothetical specter who will one day judge the whiteness of your linen and the silence of your mouth. You don't know his name, but apparently he dislikes footprints in front of the hearth. Breakfast is rye bread so hard you could file a sword on it, dipped in watery goat milk that tastes like someone whispered cheese over cold rain. You chew slowly because rapid jaw movement counts as gluttony, and gluttony invites both sin and pustulant boils according to Father Paolo. He appears right on cue, knocking, blessing, and inspecting the ceiling for hidden demons. He compliments Mama on your modest demeanor, which is hilarious because you're currently imagining him slipping on pig manure. You nod politely and swallow a splinter of crust. After prayers, it's lace-making lessons. Not the delicate bobbin art rich ladies flaunt in Florence. This is the peasant edition. Coarse thread, shaky wooden frame, and the constant threat of being rapped on the knuckles if a knot looks jealous of a neighbor knot. The village widow, Nonna Lucia, oversees the session. She smells of rosemary and preemptive disappointment. "A tidy stitch keeps a tidy soul," she says, tightening your grip until your fingers throb. You daydream about riding a horse across open fields, hair loose, skirt flying, exactly the sort of reckless fantasy that gets girls sent to convents. Outside, the piazza awakens. Merchants drag carts of onions and regret. A barber positions his blood-stained chair beneath a crucifix for moral support. Children chase a mangy dog that may or may not carry fleas ambitious enough to form unions. You're not allowed to join them. Play is tolerated only if it improves dowry value by strengthening legs or embroidery muscles, and chasing dogs does neither. Instead, you carry a wooden bucket to the communal well, dodging goat droppings and flirtatious apprentices. The bucket is heavy, the rope frays your palms, and the water is a suspicious gray that sparkles ominously in the sun. But Mama says clean water builds weak character, so you trudge home triumphant. Mid-morning brings the Grammar of Decency lecture, taught by your aunt who married a merchant and therefore thinks she's Florence's gift to etiquette. She explains table manners: never lick fingers, never sigh audibly, and never, under any circumstances, speak before spoken to, unless the Pope himself invites you to recite psalms, in which case, faint modestly first. You practice balancing a wooden spoon on your wrist while kneeling on dried peas as penance for yesterday's grimace. Your knees burn, your patience frays. Your aunt smiles with the serene cruelty of someone who traded affection for social leverage years ago. Noon arrives with church bells that echo through every alley like a reminder God is always listening, especially when you complain. Lunch is bean stew, heavy on beans, light on stew, served in a cracked clay bowl. You eat beside your older brother Matteo, who's 12 and therefore allowed to breathe suggestions about apprenticeship. He teases you, flicking crumbs, whispering that your future husband might be bald or possess the breath of a fishmonger. You retaliate by silently praying he steps on a rusted nail. Sibling love, medieval style. After lunch, Mama counts the dowry chest again. Inside, 3 silver coins, a brass hairpin, 2 lengths of homespun linen, and 1 vaguely promising promise from Uncle Carlo to donate a goat if business improves. Each item is polished, folded, and whispered over like a magical charm. You watch, realizing you are simultaneously a daughter and a financial strategy. Mama sighs, then announces it's time for deportment practice, walking across the courtyard, balancing a clay jug on your head. If it falls, that's one evening without supper. If it doesn't, you earn the privilege of spinning wool until sundown. Victory is relative. Sunlight fades, but the day's discipline isn't done. Father enters, smelling of vineyard dust and compromise. He quizzes you on catechism. What is the 8th commandment? You mumble, "Thou shalt not steal," while pondering whether stealing a moment of joy counts. He nods, satisfied, and gives you a single almond as reward. Protein and obedience in one expensive nut. Mama lights a tallow candle. Shadows jitter across rough stone. The air grows thick with wood smoke and the unspoken fear of plague rumors drifting in from Pisa. Evening prayer. The family kneels on the hard floor, reciting Latin phrases you barely understand but fear mispronouncing. The candle sputters. The saints glare from chipped frescoes. Your stomach growls louder than the devil's temptation. Afterwards, you help Mama scrub the wooden platter clean with sand. Soap is for the aristocracy, and hang the cloths to dry over the hearth, where they absorb tomorrow's smoke in advance. Bedtime at last. You climb the ladder to the loft, ducking past hanging onions and superstition charms. Your mattress is a sack of straw over creaky boards. You lay down, listening to mice debate philosophy in the rafters. Outside, the moon hangs like a tarnished coin, another reminder of debts unpaid. You clutch your only treasure, a scrap of blue ribbon Aunt smuggled from Florence. In the dark, it feels like possibility. You close your eyes. Tomorrow will repeat the same relentless ballet of dirt, dowries, and discipline. But for one heartbeat before sleep claims you, you picture yourself not as a bargaining chip in someone's marriage contract, but as Giovanna with wind-tangled hair, galloping over hills beyond the city walls where no one measures worth in coin or silence. It is a reckless dream, and therefore delicious. The next day begins predictably with dirt in your mouth. Not metaphorically, literally. A gust of wind flings a handful of courtyard dust through the shutter slats while you're mid-yawn, and just like that, you're chewing on the flavor of medieval poverty before breakfast. You are Giovanna, age 7 in 1 day, which, in your mother's eyes, means you're now ripe for additional responsibilities and minor spiritual suffering. She says this while shoving your tunic over your head and muttering about your future husband again. He still doesn't exist, but he's already ruining your life from across the timeline. Today is special, not in the celebratory sense, but in the let's visit Aunt Beatrice who joined a convent and pretends she's happier than anyone kind of special. It's supposed to be inspiring. It's not, but you're told it builds virtue, which seems to be medieval Italy's favorite coping mechanism. The journey to the convent is an hour's walk, uphill through goat-scented air and gossip that floats more freely than sunlight. You pass neighbors who nod solemnly, then whisper before you're even out of earshot. She'll be married by 14, someone says, if her family can afford the fabric for sleeves. At the gates, the nuns greet you like carved statues with vaguely judgmental auras. Aunt Beatrice appears, her habit tight, her smile tighter. She kisses your head and comments on your posture, because obviously that's the most urgent concern when facing a child who's been force-marched in wooden shoes. Inside the convent walls, everything smells of lavender, beeswax, and resignation. Beatrice shows you the gardens. They're neat, too neat. Even the cucumbers look like they've taken vows. She tells you the peace here is like God's breath. You think it feels more like organized boredom. The nuns are busy, copying scriptures, praying, and producing embroidery fine enough to bankrupt a bishop. One shows you a scene she's stitched, the martyrdom of a saint whose name sounds like a bad cough. It's gorgeous and horrific. Blood, thorns, divine light. You nod approvingly while silently swearing you'll never anger a Roman emperor. Lunch is boiled leeks with a side of fasting. You're not allowed seconds. You're not even allowed to eat without 5 minutes of whispered grace and a full-body scan from Sister Francesca, who can detect rebellion in the way you chew. You glance at Beatrice. She looks serene or sedated, possibly both. On the walk home, your mother says, "Isn't that a lovely life? So pure." You don't answer. You're still stuck on the idea that purity might be just a fancy word for invisibility. Back home, your reward for a day of holy enlightenment is more wool to spin. Spinning, you've realized, is like entering a mild trance. Your hands move, your mind drifts, your back slowly dissolves into a question mark. Sometimes you imagine your wool threads as escape routes, each twist and fiber leading somewhere far beyond Siena, maybe to Venice, or a place without lice. Mateo, your brother, returns from town glowing with masculine pride because he helped a baker and got paid in old grapes. You'd also like to contribute, but girls are told they contribute by being grateful, which, historically, has never bought bread. As the sun drops behind the terracotta rooftops, the streets begin their nightly chorus, clinking cups, coughing from the plague house 2 doors down, and the squeaky protest of every cartwheel in Italy. You help Mama light the oil lamp, a flickering puddle of golden glow, and you all sit for the evening lesson, morality through fear. Tonight's topic is Saint Agatha, who reportedly had her chest cut off for refusing marriage. You are told this is inspiring. You feel sick. After prayers, your father mentions that Signora Albinoni, the merchant's wife, saw you at the well and said you were not entirely unpresentable. Your mother clutches her chest like it's the highest compliment since the Annunciation. You are now officially on the village rumor mill as potentially marriageable in 2 to 5 years. Great. The next morning, there's more lace making. You've advanced from square knots to something almost artistic, but every mistake earns a tap from the dowel rod. Not enough to bruise, just enough to remember. You wonder if boys are learning about algebra and battlefield tactics while you're here, untangling thread and social expectations. After lace comes Latin, not real Latin, girl Latin. Enough to understand church services, but not enough to be dangerous. You learn that virtus means virtue, pietas means loyalty, and tacit means be quiet, which coincidentally is what you're told every time you open your mouth. Then come manners drills. You curtsy until your knees hate God. You learn the difference between a respectful silence and a sullen silence. You practice sitting with your ankles demurely crossed while balancing a plate of raw turnips on your lap. If you drop one, you must recite proverbs in Latin while holding a candlestick. The goal, as far as you can tell, is to become so perfectly behaved that you fade into a pleasant backdrop for a man's ambition. Midday brings a visitor, your grandmother. She arrives with 2 live chickens under her arm and stories of her girlhood, which mostly involve marrying your grandfather when she was 13 and once biting a noblewoman who called her a pig. She's a legend. She's also your role model, but she smells like vinegar and yells at mice. Over stew, she tells you what makes a good wife: obedience, patience, and strong teeth. You're not sure about the first 2, but you did chew a peach pit last summer and only chipped 1 molar, so maybe that counts. In the afternoon, you and Mama clean the family shrine, dust the Virgin Mary, replace the wilted basil, light the candle that smells faintly like desperation and mold. You say your prayers, not because you're devout, but because everyone insists God loves a good listener more than a thinker. Evening brings a scandal. You overhear that Katerina, a girl from down the road, was caught speaking to a miller's apprentice. Unaccompanied. Her parents are furious. The dowry negotiations might fall through. Her reputation, mud splattered. You absorb the lesson silently. In medieval Italy, a single glance can collapse your entire future like an underbaked focaccia. Before bed, your mother shows you her wedding gown. It smells of cedar and memory. You touch the fabric gently. It's heavier than you imagine. A stiff kind of silk, embroidered with small birds. She tells you you'll wear it one day, and you wonder if she means that as a threat or a hope. You lie down in your straw-filled mattress and stare at the wooden ceiling beams. You count them like sins. Tomorrow will be more of the same. Sewing, scrubbing, pretending that virtue is reward enough. But somewhere, just before sleep, you imagine the saints applauding the girls who misbehaved, the ones who ran, who fought, who bit noble women and survived, and you smile in the dark, because maybe obedience isn't the only path to sainthood. You wake up to shouting in the street and immediately wish you hadn't. It's market day, which means noise, elbows, and enough sweaty humanity to question the entire concept of free will. For most girls in medieval Italy, market day is either the height of social stimulation or the beginning of a lifelong distrust of vegetables. For you, Giovanna, age 7, daughter of decent enough peasants with dreams bigger than their purse, it's a chance to be seen, but not heard, never heard. Mama dresses you like you're an unopened parcel. Tight bodice, stiff wool skirt, an apron that functions more as a social symbol than a practical tool. The hair is braided so tightly your scalp develops new spiritual convictions, and then oiled with something that smells faintly of rancid rosemary. First impressions are everything, she says, tugging one last time on the braid. You don't ask what happens if someone's first impression is This child looks like she's in traction. At the market, everyone pretends not to look at everyone else while looking very hard indeed. The butcher's daughter has new shoes, which means they've definitely secured a better marriage prospect. The miller's niece is mysteriously absent, probably locked indoors after last week's scandalous elbow-brushing incident with a carpenter's apprentice. And there's Katerina, the girl caught speaking to a boy, now walking 2 paces behind her mother like a disgraced chicken. Mama surveys the stalls like a general preparing for battle. You're sent to inspect the onions, firm, not too green. The beans, dry but not suspiciously so. And the fish, dead but in a charming way. Meanwhile, she haggles with the vinegar merchant, who wears his robe like a curtain and his beard like a public threat. He eyes you, then nods approvingly. She'll fetch a good match, he says. You wish he'd been talking about a pig. Then comes the procession, a minor noble and his entourage, gliding through the market as if their cloaks don't touch dirt. The noble has a face like a pastry that's been left in the sun, soft, rich, and vaguely damp. His eyes scan the girls like he's shopping for curtain fabric. When they pass you, he nods. You do not nod back. You blink slowly and imagine him slipping on goat droppings. Mama gasps, "He noticed you." You feel your soul shrink. He also once noticed a turnip by mistake. But for the next 2 weeks, your family will dine on this moment like it's roasted lamb. Back home, there's talk of tailoring the wedding gown already, just in case. It's brought down from the chest again. You're instructed to practice walking with dignity while wearing it. The train is too long, the fabric too stiff, and you're still growing into your second front tooth. But sure, let's pretend you're ready to be bartered for 5 chickens and a barrel of wine. That afternoon, your older cousin Elena arrives from Florence. Elena is 13, which in medieval girl math is approximately 43. She's fashionable, literate, and terrifying. She's also been betrothed to a notary's son since she was 6, and now that the wedding is approaching, she has opinions. "Elbows in," she says, watching you walk. "Smile less, you look eager." She teaches you how to curtsy without looking desperate, how to pour wine without spilling a drop, and therefore appearing wasteful, and how to deflect unwanted male attention using only the angle of your chin. It's like espionage, but with tulle. Then she shows you the bridal knife. It's ceremonial, silver, and tucked into the belt of her gown, supposedly for cutting bread, but everyone knows it's for symbolism. "It means purity," she says, or violence, depending on who's asking. She smiles, and for a moment you think she might survive this life. Later you sit by the hearth, watching sparks rise like gossip. Your mother and aunt are discussing dowry strategies like economists at a panic sale. Linen is being counted again. Candles are being melted down for reuse. At one point, someone mentions borrowing silver buttons from a dead cousin's wardrobe. You learn that the difference between nobility and disgrace is often 3 florins and a well-timed rumor. From the market, and about the fish, you prefer the fish. The next morning, it's embroidery. Again, you're stitching a pattern onto a pillowcase that will eventually end up in your dowry chest, which is odd, since you suspect that marriage will not involve much sleeping. The design is a dove surrounded by vines, symbolizing peace, fertility, and how you're expected to look while producing 9 children in 11 years. Aunt Lucia supervises. She's decided to teach you the art of conversation. A good bride listens. A great bride listens and flatters. She leans in. You must admire your husband's boots, especially if they're hideous. It makes him feel powerful. You nod, stitching carefully, all while imagining those same boots stepping in something poetic. At lunch, your father receives a letter from a merchant cousin in Bologna. The cousin has a son. The son is 14. He owns a goat and reads psalms aloud. This is, by every metric of medieval matchmaking, a jackpot. Not officially engaged, your mother reminds you, but we must act available. You are instructed to memorize a psalm, the one about obedience. You recite it to the goat during your chore hour. The goat seems unimpressed. In the evening, you help Mama scrub the laundry against a slab of rock until your knuckles ache. You've been taught that clean linens are the mark of a good wife, a God-fearing household, and effective public relations. While hanging the sheets, you see Matteo play fighting with other boys using sticks like swords. One of them falls dramatically into a puddle and yells, "Death before dishonor." They all cheer. You ask Mama if girls get to die before dishonor. She says, only if you're rich or a saint. You nod solemnly and plan accordingly. That night, you overhear a whispered conversation between your parents. Your name is mentioned, so is the cousin's goat-owning son. Also the phrase, if we can get the linen dyed in time. You stare at the ceiling again, count the same beams, dream of neither weddings nor martyrs, but of running away barefoot and living in a vineyard with 100 cats. No embroidery, no elbows in, just figs, sun, and silence. It's not realistic, but it's yours. And that, for now, is enough. The sun isn't even up when you're shaken awake. It's wedding season, which means no one sleeps, everyone lies, and your fate might be decided over a cup of lukewarm wine and a crust of stale bread. You, Giovanna, age 7 3/4, are apparently now old enough to observe and learn, which in practice means carrying baskets, smiling politely, and staying out of the way until someone decides to assess your marketability again. Today, there's a wedding in the village. Not yours, not yet, but soon enough, if your mother has anything to say about it. The bride is 15, a full-grown woman by medieval standards, and about as thrilled as someone being marched to the gallows while wearing lace. Your mother insists you wear your good smock, the one with the red embroidery that itches like moral punishment. She braids your hair so tight your eyebrows migrate halfway up your forehead, then tells you to stand up straight and act like a girl worth marrying. You resist the urge to stand like a feral goat out of spite. The village is buzzing, not joyfully, but in that tense way people get when mixing alcohol, religion, and the forced merger of two family lineages. The ceremony is held in the church, where saints look down from frescoes with expressions that say, "We don't condone this either." The bride is pale and trembling. The groom looks like a tax audit in human form. He's 26 and smells like sheep, which might be a feature, not a flaw. During the ceremony, she stumbles over her vow and there's an audible gasp from the crowd, like someone dropped the host in a puddle. She recovers quickly. She's been trained for this moment since she was your size. Smile, obey, and never forget the dowry ledger is thicker than the Bible. After the wedding, there's a feast. You are not allowed to sit with the adults, but you're allowed to serve them, which somehow isn't considered degrading if you do it with a smile. You pour wine and are told to walk gracefully, even though the floor is made of uneven stone and your shoes are one step away from structural failure. At one point, an uncle you've never seen before pinches your cheek and says, "This one will be a beauty." You smile, because what else can you do? But internally, you plan to trip him later and blame it on divine judgment. That night, the bride is escorted to her new home like she's being shipped off to sea. She doesn't cry, that would be undignified, but she doesn't smile either, which is somehow even more haunting. You watch as her veil disappears behind the door and wonder if she'll ever come back, or if she'll simply become another woman with hands like leather and eyes like fog. Your mother sighs beside you. Soon, your turn. You say nothing. You're learning that silence is a girl's sharpest weapon, just behind politeness and strategic feinting. The next week is dowry inventory day. Everything you might someday bring to a marriage is laid out, inspected, and discussed like cattle. Embroidered linens, 2 chipped pewter spoons, a small prayer book, and a hair comb with 3 missing teeth. It's not impressive. Your mother frets. Your father mumbles something about increasing the goat herd. You wonder how many animals you're worth. You suspect the answer is a sad-looking donkey and a half-drunken barrel of wine. Meanwhile, your education intensifies. You're being taught music now. Not real music, of course. Not the kind with drums or joy. Just enough lute playing to accompany a tragic poem or a pious sigh. Your fingers bleed. Your tutor says, "That's how you know you're improving." You'd rather learn swordplay, but girls aren't allowed to want things with blades. Then comes court etiquette. Elena returns from Florence with tales of silk sleeves and scandalous whispers. She teaches you how to bow so deeply you could smell floor wax if it existed. She shows you how to accept a compliment without appearing pleased, and how to pretend you've read a book just by nodding in the right places. You begin to understand that your entire life might revolve around pretending to be someone else. Quieter, sweeter, less itchy. Your body starts changing. Not dramatically, but enough for the neighborhood priest to stop making eye contact, and for your mother to start sewing faster. You're told to cover more, speak less, and pray harder. This is the time, she says, when the devil waits. You'd argue that the devil is probably exhausted from chasing girls who haven't even finished their Latin lessons, but again, you smile and nod. You've mastered the art of internal screaming. One morning, you hear your parents arguing. Something about the cousin in Bologna. His goat died, his father fell ill. The wedding might be off. Your mother weeps, your father curses. You sit quietly in the corner, working on lace with trembling hands, realizing your life is more fragile than your stitching. Days pass, no word, no letters, no suitors. You exist in limbo, a girl-shaped shadow haunting the kitchen and praying not for romance, but for stability, and maybe a pair of shoes that don't leak. Then one afternoon, a visitor, not a noble, not a merchant, a priest. He asks to speak with your father in private. You eavesdrop, because obedience ends where curiosity begins. He says there's a convent accepting girls your age. There might be space. It's quiet, safe, godly. Your mother is horrified. She's not a nun. But your father is quiet. He looks at the half-empty cupboard, the chipped comb, the prayers that haven't brought dowries. You realize you might be put on a different path, not by choice, but by math. You go to the garden. The mint smells strong today. You rip some out by the roots and let the dirt sit in your hands. For the first time, you realize something brutal and beautiful. In medieval Italy, survival is its own form of rebellion. Whether as a bride, a nun, or a very well-behaved ghost, you will survive, and that, for now, is your only plan.
Imagine waking up every morning knowing your entire job security hinges on the fact that someone once removed parts of you with a bamboo knife and a prayer. One misplaced bow in front of the emperor, and you'll end up fertilizing a lotus pond before sunset. It's dawn in the Forbidden City, and by dawn, I mean the instant the first palace bell clangs like an iron migraine. You're Fong, because all eunuchs require a short, unimpressive name, and you sleep on a straw mat shoved beneath an ornate corridor that birds aren't even allowed to poop on. The floor is marble, the draft is eternal. You've been awake for an hour already, because in this palace the sun rises after the gossip starts. Your first task is simple: survive the morning roll call without fainting, tripping, or sneezing too loudly near a prince who studied poetry instead of anger management. You shuffle into the courtyard, eyes low, hands clasped, posture bent at exactly 43 degrees of humility. Around you, 300 other eunuchs form lines as neat as lacquer boxes. Senior Overseer Lou stalks past, inspecting everyone's collars for dust and everyone's souls for treason. His beard is so thin it looks embroidered, and his expression suggests he invented disappointment personally. He stops before you, flicks a speck of imaginary lint from your sleeve, and moves on. Congratulations, you are still technically alive. Next comes breakfast, which is less meal and more chou der buffet. A porcelain bowl of rice gruel so watery your reflection stares back in existential terror. You slurp silently, because slurping audibly would imply desire, and desire is the one commodity that can get a eunuch executed for false advertising. Beside you, Eunuch Chen whispers that the Empress Dowager dreamt of white tigers last night, an omen of upheaval. You swallow the rumor with the soup. In the Forbidden City, information is nutrition, actual food is garnish. Duty assignments are barked out like military commands. You, Lucky Fawn, are posted to the Western Pearl Pavilion, otherwise known as where concubines go to pretend they're happy. Your job: deliver fresh incense coils, sweep every surface until it gleams like imperial virtue, and avoid eye contact with anyone ranking higher than a decorative fish. The corridor to the pavilion is a maze of red lacquer and golden dragons. Each door hides someone plotting, weeping, or rehearsing flirty sighs that could advance them one rank closer to power, or exile. You pass a gilded screen and nearly collide with virtue consort May's maid. She drops a silk handkerchief embroidered with peonies. Palace rules say you must kneel, retrieve it delicately, and return it without leaving fingerprints or lingering gratitude. May's maid rewards you with a glance that could freeze tea. She whispers, "The consort desires jasmine incense, not sandalwood." Code 4. Fix this or your kneecaps become decorative lanterns. You bow so low your vertebrae file a complaint, then scurry to the storeroom. Inside, shelves groan beneath boxes of spices, pearls, and secret bribes. You find jasmine coils hidden behind a crate labeled, "Repair nails, ignore." Classic misdirection. You swap them quickly, wipe the evidence, and make a mental note to thank whichever ancestor taught you to read cursive inventively. On the way out, Eunuch Ming corners you. He's new, terrified, and leaking sweat. He asks how to survive his first month without losing organs he technically no longer possesses. You answer, "Breathe softly, gossip softer, bow like bamboo, and never loan money, especially to princes." Back at the pavilion, you light the incense. Jasmine smoke curls upward like silk escaping gravity. Virtue consort May steps through beaded curtains, her robe a waterfall of ice blue brocade. She ignores you, which is perfect. An ignored eunuch is a safe eunuch. But as she passes, a single hairpin slips from her coiffure and lands at your feet. Another test. You kneel, pick it up on open palms, eyes down, voice barely audible. An unworthy servant returns the moon to her grace. She smiles, a microscopic twitch, and glides away. You exhale for the first time in 10 minutes. Mid-morning brings inventory duty in the hall of treasured delicacies. This sounds delicious until you realize it's actually a fancy pantry you must guard so palace chefs don't smuggle abalone to their cousins. You count jars of bird's nest, tally ginseng roots, and weigh exactly 19 peaches destined for the emperor's lunch. One peach has a bruise, so you fill out 3 scrolls explaining why agriculture offended heaven this season. Bureaucracy is the palace's second religion, paperwork is prayer. During a lull, Eunuch Zhao shares the day's hottest rumor. The crown prince has written a poem comparing the emperor's beard to autumn clouds, clearly satire, possibly treason. If the wrong ear hears it, heads will roll faster than lacquered beads in an earthquake. You nod, file the intel, and vow never to compose poetry longer than 3 characters. Yes, your majesty. Lunch break arrives, 15 minutes of dining etiquette boot camp. Today's menu, steamed millet and boiled greens so bland they might be purely hypothetical. You chew 40 times per bite, partly for digestion, mostly to stall. Across the table, Eunuch quietly adjusts a bandage. Last night he tripped while carrying night soil buckets and mashed his shin. Palace medicine smells like menthol and regret. You push him your greens. He slides a rumor back. The Empress Dowager favors eunuchs who can sing falsetto. You can't sing. You vow to practice screaming silently until it sounds melodic. Post-lunch, you polish dragon motifs on bronze urns until you can see your haunted reflection. A footstep behind you, Deputy Chamberlain Su. He speaks in honeyed tones but stores vipers in his sleeves. "Fong," he says, "the Emperor's parrot requires fresh lychee. Fetch them from the southern orchard. And remember, no bite marks." Translation: waste time and I'll frame you for theft. You bow, sprint through courtyards hotter than a blacksmith's sigh, seize a basket of lychees guarded by eunuchs who only speak in ledger numbers, and sprint back. The parrot thanks you by mimicking the chancellor's snore. Everyone laughs except you, because laughing implies presence. By late afternoon the palace tilts into its most dangerous mood, boredom. Princes gamble with ivory dice. Concubines plot theatrical illnesses. Eunuchs deliver tea laced with flattery. You're assigned to sweep the Imperial Opera Hall where musicians rehearse a tragedy about loyalty, which everyone While gathering dust with a goose feather brush, you overhear a tenor complaining that eunuchs drape curtains unevenly. You resist the urge to wrap him in one. Evening approaches, painting the rooftops in molten gold. You march to the Office of Internal Records for daily log signing. There, clerks with ink-black fingers record every object moved, words spoken, and sigh exhaled within these walls. You sign your name with a trembling brush. Above the ledger, a notice. Imperial inspection tomorrow at dawn. Heartbeat accelerates. Inspections mean spotless floors, flawless rituals, an instant punishment for the faintest misalignment of anything, including eyebrows. Dinner is a bowl of rice sprinkled with sesame and existential dread. You eat standing because benches are reserved for people with official titles and working genitals. Around you, conversation buzzes. Which eunuch will faint first? Which concubine will fake pregnancy? Who bribed which astrologer to declare auspicious stars? It's less dining hall, more stock exchange for paranoia. Lights out order echoes through corridors. You shuffle back to your mat, muscles aching, sandal straps frayed. As you settle, Eunuch Chin appears, eyes wide as mooncakes. He whispers, "Overseer Lu suspects bribery in the lychee delivery. He's checking fingerprints at sunrise." You stare at your hands, still sticky with lychee resin. Perfect. Sleep now equates to death later. So you spend the night scrubbing fingers with rice vinegar until your skin resembles pickled parchment, all while reciting tomorrow's inspection protocol. Bow, present past token, maintain eye level with the Emperor's shoes only. Somewhere beyond the vermilion walls, fireworks crackle. Maybe a general's birthday, maybe another victory on a distant frontier. Inside, silence reigns. You lie awake, counting the breaths between gong strikes. Every inhalation is proof you've survived one more cycle of palace cruelty, one more rotation of the jade wheel where eunuchs are spokes easily replaced. At last, you whisper to the ceiling beams, "Endure." It isn't a prayer, it's a strategy. Then you close your eyes, dreaming not of freedom, an absurd luxury, but of another dawn where Senior Overseer Lu flicks phantom dust from your sleeve and moves on. You live for that flick. It means you are still invisible. And in the Forbidden City, invisibility is the highest form of power a eunuch can hope to wield. Before the first bell strikes, you're already kneeling in the courtyard, knuckles white against morning frost that shouldn't exist in June but does, because the universe likes thematic irony. Imperial Inspection Day arrives with a sky the color of bureaucracy, flat, unforgiving, and somehow smudged at the edges. Senior Overseer Lu stalks the perimeter, robes snapping like accusations. Everyone shivers, but no one dares exhale hard enough to fog the air. Condensation on the Emperor's pathway could be interpreted as sabotage. Protocol dictates you present yourself in 4 steps. Silent bow, token raised chest level, eyes fixed on middle distance, followed by a stillness contest against a palace statue. You pass the first 3 effortlessly. The 4th nearly ends you when a beetle lands on your neck. You resist the urge to flick it off, silently negotiating with destiny. "If I survive inspection, I'll donate tomorrow's rice to the kitchen god." Destiny yawns, the beetle flies away, Overseer Lu moves on. Half the courtyard exhales in relief. The other half faints artistically to mask relief, citing weak spleens. Inspection parade commences. The Emperor arrives on a palanquin gilded enough to blind astronomy. Behind him trail ministers, astrologers, and one extremely bored royal goat, symbolic of frugality or possibly someone's inside joke. Eunuchs kneel as the procession passes. Concubines watch from shadowed balconies, their silk sleeves fluttering like discreet fan mail. When the Emperor's sedan chair stops, everyone freezes into human commas. He dismounts, examines a jade pomegranate tree for approximately 7 eternal seconds, then announces, "Order is pleasing." Just 3 words, but they'd bury a week of collective dread beneath a shallow grave of polite applause. You think it's over. It never is. Deputy Chamberlain Su appears at your elbow, voice low and sweet. "His Majesty's parrot requires lychee again, fresh, no bruises. And bring wine cups to the Jade Harmony Garden. The Crown Prince will host poetry readings." Translation: Fetch cups, fetch divine patience, all within 15 breaths. You sprint across the palace like urgency wearing slippers, palms sweating around the wooden lychee tray. Halfway there, Eunuch Zhao intercepts you with gossip disguised as warning. Rumor says the Empress Dowager suspects poison in the parrot's treats. She ordered surprise taste tests. You look at the lychees, then at Zhao. He shrugs, already stepping back in case you explode. You weigh options. Refusal equals treason. Consumption equals possible agonizing death. Solution: micro-nibble one lychee, enough to look earnest, not enough to ingest fatal dose. You take the tiniest bite, count to 10, feel nothing but shame, sprint on. At the pavilion entrance, a junior guard demands proof you sampled the fruit. You open your mouth, display incriminating pulp on tongue. He nods, satisfied, waves you through. Survival tip number 27. Sometimes poisoning yourself is safer than appearing cowardly. Inside Jade Harmony Garden, young officials lounge beneath wisteria, pretending to critique calligraphy while actually ranking concubine hairstyles. The crown prince reclines on embroidered cushions, face glowing with the smugness whose never paid taxes can muster. He claps for more wine. You kneel, pour from jade decanter into cups thin as eggshells, praying your wrist won't tremble. It doesn't. The prince sips, grimaces at the bouquet, too earthy, apparently, and flings half the contents onto the koi pond. Nobody laughs, so he commissions an impromptu poem about wasted potential. Court scribes scramble. You continue pouring, invisibility cloak firmly in place. Then disaster strikes disguised as comedy. Eunuch Ming, still green as spring cabbage, trips on a decorative rock, sending an entire tray of melon slices airborne. One lands squarely on the prince's silk sleeve, leaving a wet starburst of sticky disgrace. Silence detonates across the garden. Overseer Lu's eyes narrow to lethal calligraphy strokes. The prince's face reddens into a sunset of impending wrath. You assess outcomes. Ming will be flogged, or worse, unless someone deflects fury faster than a palace censor edits truth. Your body moves before your brain files the paperwork. You drop to the stones, forehead kissing ground, voice projecting humble urgency. Unworthy servant accepts full blame. I incorrectly stacked refreshment trays. The lie is perfect, plausible, self-incriminating, and presented with the melodramatic flair nobles require for anecdotes. Overseer Lu's eyebrow arcs. He likes neat solutions almost as much as he hates extra paperwork. The prince squints at you, then at the terrified Ming, then back at the melon stain. Finally he snorts, amused by your suicidal loyalty, and declares, "Flog one of them, your choice." Lu bows, drags you forward by the collar. Ming collapses in gratitude. You think, fabulous plan, Fong. The flogging yard smells like old bamboo and newer regrets. Standard sentence for minor offense, 10 lashes, symbolic, more stinging than damaging, if the executioner is merciful. Eunuch punishments, however, scale with mood. Today's executioner is bored. He selects a rod that hums when flexed. You kneel, back exposed, counting prayers to non-existent gods. First strike, shockwave of fire across shoulders. Second strike, flash of white behind eyes. Third, pain folds into itself, becomes cold. You reach 7 before losing track of numbers, clutching dignity like a cracked porcelain cup. Afterward, Ming helps you stumble to the infirmary storeroom, because official infirmary beds belong to people with titles. He weeps apologies until you silence him. Tears are loud. He swears eternal loyalty. You suspect it will last until his next panic. No matter. Favors traded now compound like imperial debt later. Survival tip number 41. Pain is currency. Spend it where interest accrues. Night falls. Your wounds ooze beneath linen, each breath a lesson in restraint. Yet duty persists. You're scheduled for lantern patrol along the Vermilion Corridor. Ironic, given you can barely stand straight. Skipping would incur Lu's wrath. Attending might rupture a rib. You choose the latter. The corridor is silent, lamps casting dragon-shaped halos on lacquered pillars. Halfway through your route, you hear hushed voices behind a silk screen. Curiosity is lethal, but ignorance is bankruptcy. You pause, listen. 2 concubines plotting to smuggle a love letter to a court poet. If discovered, they're doomed. If reported, you might lose favor. You press fingers to welted back, recall the rod's whistle, then step away. Neutrality is safer than gratitude weighed against jealousy. Approaching the end of patrol, you spot Deputy Chamberlain Su speaking to a shadowy figure exchanging pouches of silver. Bribery unmistakable. Su notices you, smiles thin as rice paper. You bow and continue walking. He calls after you, voice smooth. Fam, tomorrow assist me at Dawn Court. Bring fresh ink. Translation: keep quiet, get closer to danger. You nod, because nodding is cheaper than truth. Back at quarters, you collapse onto straw, pain flaring like festival fireworks. Eunuch examines your back, applies herb paste reeking of camphor and secrets. He whispers latest rumor: the Emperor plans a surprise night visit to Virtue Consort May. If she conceives, power shifts. If she doesn't, heads roll, figuratively now, literally later. You recall the jasmine incense swap, hope her pavilion still smells like ambition wrapped in innocence. Sleep comes in stuttering increments. You dream of lychee trees dripping blood, parrots reciting execution orders, and melon slices orbiting your head like smug halos. A gong shatters dream glass. Midnight emergency summons. All eunuchs assemble in torchlight court. Rumor crackles, an assassin arrow found lodged in an outer gate. No injuries, but paranoia breeds like summer flies. Overseer Lu prowls, demanding any suspicious observations. You consider Sue's bribe, the concubine plot, the prince's poetry, each a potential death sentence if embellished incorrectly. You step forward to speak, then see Sue's cold eyes fixed on you, warning carved into iris. You step back. Silence again purchases life on credit. After interrogation yields nothing, eunuchs dismissed with orders to double patrols. You limp back to corridor duty, lantern heavier than guilt. Wind rattles roof tiles like bones in a bowl. In this city, night never really ends. It just resets expectations of treachery. You pause beneath the moon gate, press forehead to cool stone, let pain anchor thoughts. Lessons of the day stack like memorial tablets. Lie quickly, bleed quietly, choose witnesses wisely, and never outshine a melon stain. Most importantly, survive long enough to leverage today's scars into tomorrow's leverage. Power here isn't owned, it's rented hourly with interest paid in silence. Dawn slithers over glazed rooftops, staining them pink as healing flesh. You straighten, adjust collar to hide dried blood, and head for morning roll call. Another revolution of the jade wheel begins. Somewhere, a parrot screeches for fresh lychee. Somewhere else, a concubine burns a letter. Everywhere, eunuchs whisper the only prayer that matters: endure. You whisper it, too, voice hoarse but steady, because endurance is not just strategy anymore. It's identity, carved deeper than any wound, brighter than imperial gold, and for one more day, still yours. Morning roll calls should feel routine by now, but your back still throbs like a war drum with a personal vendetta. The bruises bloom under your robe in imperial purples and yellows, an accidental tribute to the dynasty. You kneel without grimacing, eyes on the cobblestones. Senior Overseer Lu strides past, cataloging posture, dust, and souls with equal disdain. His gaze flicks over you and pauses. A slow, deliberate nod. You just received a promotion, from invisible to vaguely tolerable. Congratulations. Please enjoy your complimentary ration of continued existence. Deputy Chamberlain Su materializes the moment roll call breaks, issuing orders in a honeyed whisper. You're to attend Dawn Court immediately, serving ink, seals, and silence. This is either an honor or a trap. In the Forbidden City they have identical packaging. You duck through vermilion corridors, passing art students copying ancestral portraits, while quietly others don't notice the budget cuts. Ahead, the Hall of Supreme Harmony yawns open like a lacquered beast. Ministers hover inside, fluttering robes, mouthing rehearsed flattery. Su points you to a low table stacked with memorial scrolls and an inkstone carved into a dragon devouring clouds. Subtle. The Emperor enters, gliding, not walking, followed by a perfumed cloud of sandalwood and near divinity. Everyone drops to their knees like marionettes whose strings were cut. You pour ink, heart pounding double time. A minister steps forward, presenting a petition about river dredging. The Emperor listens, twirls his beard, then looks to His Majesty's new favorite pastime, spontaneous quizzes. Explain, he demands, how dredging will appease the river god without angering the grain spirits. The minister blanches. You, positioned one pace behind, feel Sue's eyes drill into your skull. Be useful. You clear your throat, soft, respectful, suicidal. Humblest suggestion, Your Majesty, offer first fruits from the southern millet stores. Grain spirits value precedence more than volume. Silence crystallizes. The Emperor raises an eyebrow. He likes precedence. He dislikes famine. He nods. Minister collapses with gratitude. Overseer Liu, standing among record keepers, notes your intervention and writes something in a ledger. A single stroke that might mean commendation or future whipping. Impossible to tell. Court adjourns. Su shepherds you aside, expression unreadable. Bold, he murmurs. Dangerous. Possibly profitable. Meet me at Moongate Pavilion at dusk. Translation: You're either gaining an ally or auditioning for Scapegoat of the Month. For now, new duties. Accompany the Imperial Pharmacist to inspect tonight's dishes for poison. Officially, this protects the Emperor. Unofficially, it's Palace Theater. Because if an assassin wanted real success, he'd bribe the pharmacist first. Still, protocol is revenue. Each inspection yields fees, fears, and favor. The pharmacist, a stooped man smelling of ginseng and cynicism, hands you a silver needle. Test the carp stew, he rasps. Silver darkens when touching certain toxins. Lucky you, carp stew today is cleaner than monastery gossip. Unlucky you, tasting protocol follows. One sip scalds your tongue and confirms the chef's overconfidence in chili. Tears well, poison would have been gentler. Mid-afternoon, you're dispatched to the Bureau of Musical Affairs. Rumor says the Emperor plans an impromptu moon banquet. He wants zither tuned to the exact pitch of yearning without despair. The bureau chief is hysterical, strings snapped overnight, mice, humidity, sabotage, who knows? He thrusts a lacquer box into your hands. Inside, a set of rare phoenix gut strings. Deliver these to Virtue Consort May's musicians, now. Running through palace avenues with contraband that could be mistaken for bribed material is peak cardiovascular treachery. You dodge officials, avoid gossip knots, sidestep a procession of eunuchs hauling chamber pots like dubious trophies, and reach May's rehearsal hall intact. Inside, May herself lingers behind a silk screen, voice like a breeze negotiating with perfume. She thanks you, an actual spoken thank you. The musicians bow, resting their zither, pluck a test chord that vibrates straight down your spine. May leans closer, whispers. Tonight the Emperor will ask for the Autumn River melody. Ensure no one changes the tuning. You nod, exit, and run smack into Eunuch Zhao, who blurts fresh scandal, an edict ordering the Crown Prince to compose a eulogy for the Imperial goat. Yes, the symbolic one. After it fell this morning. Hates writing under pressure. He'll erupt at whoever reminds him the goat mattered. You file this as potential chaos. Evening shadows crawl across glazed rooftops. You arrive at Moongate Pavilion for Sue's summons. He stands alone, lantern light painting sharp lines on his face. I require allies, he begins. Not servants who flinch. He outlines a scheme. Certain ministers are funneling tax silver into private opera troops. Sue intends to expose them, if he can secure the Emperor's trust first. Evidence exists, a ledger hidden inside the Grand Eunuch's archive. Sue can't fetch it, political optics. You, however, float beneath notice. retrieve the ledger tonight. In return, he'll erase your flogging record and place you in charge of incense logistics. A post with both bribe flow and limited beatings. Survival tip number 59. Promotion offers from snakes often include anti-venom. You weigh options. Refuse, remain expendable. Accept, risk death if caught. You picture Overseer Lou's rod, your current bruises, and nod. Sue smiles, predatory approval, and hands you a pass token engraved with the Grand Eunuch's seal. After second drum, he says, "Bring it to the Lotus Library." The archive is a labyrinth of bamboo shelves and secrets thick enough to chew. Lanterns sputter, scrolls rustle like restless ghosts. You slip inside using the token, heart thundering. A junior record keeper snoozes beside an abacus. You tiptoe past, scanning labels, tribute lists, astrological errors, chamber pot procurement. Finally, provincial revenues, restricted. You slide the lattice door, fingers trembling, and spot a bound ledger tied with crimson cord, extravagant for simple accounts. As you lift it, parchment slips free, a personal letter implicating Deputy Chamberlain Sue himself in earlier bribe schemes. Poison inside anti-venom. Footsteps. You freeze, ledger pressed to chest. Overseer Lou enters, lantern raised. His eyes find you instantly. "Why?" he asks softly. "Do I continually discover you where stories begin?" You kneel, offering both ledger and letter. "A servant obeys orders, Overseer. Perhaps conflicting ones." He scans the letter first, mouth curling in interest. Then the ledger. Sue's claws reach far. He murmurs. He taps the lantern rim thoughtfully. "Deliver these to him. Tell him I never forget favors." Translation: take the goods, keep me informed, and maybe you'll graduate from whipping target to messenger of mutually assured destruction. You back out, pulse hammering. Lotus Library looms silent except for water dripping from roof tiles. Sue paces among scroll racks, eyes glittering. You hand him the ledger. He sighs, relief mingling with triumph. You keep a serene mask as he tucks the incriminating book into his sleeve. "Excellent. We rise together, Fawn." You bow, slide the loose letter into your own sleeve. Insurance. Return to quarters just before curfew. Eunuch Shin waits, news plastered across his face. The parrot refused lychee, screeched. "Treason!" and bit a minister's ear. Palace rumor mill now spins accusations faster than spindle wheels. Guards double patrols. Every corridor smells of fierce sweat and sandalwood. You hide the letter beneath your straw mat, trusting insects over humans. Midnight drums. You dream of zither snapping mid-melody, of rice grains turning into silver coins that melt through your palms. A crash wakes you, door kicked in, torches glaring. Palace guards swarm, drag Eunuch Ming away screaming. Charge, tampering with royal fruit supply. You glimpse Sue in the hallway, face blank, hands clean. Sacrifice offered, inspection satisfaction guaranteed. Your stomach knots. He played you as pawn insurance. Overseer Lou watches from the shadows, eyes confirming what you now know. Alliances here are paper umbrellas in typhoons. Guard captain barks. "All eunuchs report to Crimson Courtyard at dawn." Full interrogation. You lie back on straw, fatigue crushed under new dread. Fingers brush the hidden letter, the only blade you possess in a palace that bans weapons. Dawn's gong will decide whether it's sharp enough. You whisper the nightly creed, endure, but this time it tastes of iron and ink. The dawn gong shivers through the forbidden city like a blade across porcelain, and you, Fawn, snap awake beneath your straw mat arsenal. One incriminating letter, 7 bruised ribs, and a prayer that sounds suspiciously like swearing. The Crimson Courtyard's cobblestones glisten with last night's rain, polished by fear. Rows of eunuchs kneel, eyes lowered, waiting for interrogation that promises either exoneration or exemplary punishment. Senior Overseer Lou stands sentinel, expression carved from frost. Deputy Chamberlain Su lingers nearby, smile lacquer thin, the ledger you stole for him nowhere in sight. The captain of the guard strides to center stage holding a crimson silk pouch. Inside, the alleged poisoned lychee seed that doomed Eunuch Ming. He recites charges: tampering with imperial provisions, conspiracy, cosmic insolence. When Ming is dragged forward, shackled and shaking, you feel the palace tilt. Someone must bleed to steady its balance. Sue's eyes graze you, subtle reminder of disposable pieces. Lu's gaze follows, flint striking steel. You inhale, taste copper, and realize silence will bury you beside Ming. You rise, not fully, just enough to fracture protocol. Gasps ripple. You bow halfway, voice steady. Humbly beg to speak, Captain. Evidence exists that this charge Mr. X justice. You withdraw the hidden letter like a magician pulling knives from air. Lu's brows lift a millimeter. Sue's smile cracks. The captain snatches the parchment, reading aloud, accounts of silver diverted to private opera troops, signed by Sue's own elegant hand, plus instructions to bribe food inspectors, lychee supply included. A murmur of treason blooms. Sue lunges, pleading forgery, but Lu's hand clamps his shoulder. Escort Deputy Chamberlain Su for imperial judgment, he orders, voice calm as falling ash. Guards converge. Sue's dignity shatters louder than his protests. Ming collapses in gratitude, chains clinking like distant temple bells. Interrogation disperses in stunned silence. Lu approaches you, eyes unreadable. You play weighty with palace dragons, he murmurs. Careful you don't become the board. Then, almost kindly, report to the Hall of Incense Logistics after midday meal. Your promotion awaits. He turns, robe whispering secrets. Freedom for Ming, downfall for Su. Your move reshuffled the court. But promotions in the Forbidden City are dragons wearing rabbit masks. You accept with bowed head and clenched gut. Incense Logistics sounds tranquil until you learn its true power. Scent controls mood, mood steers emperors, emperors steer destinies. Storerooms stacked with agarwood bricks worth provincial fortunes. Ambergris jars sealed in jade. Secret sachets laced with rare Himalayan musk. Your new desk, really a lacquered stool, overlooks ledgers tracking every coil burned near imperial nostrils. One misplaced aroma can topple a favorite or ignite a rumor of pregnancy. Lu's reward is razor-edged responsibility. Your first directive: craft a fragrant scheme for tonight's moon banquet. Yes, the one featuring zither tuned to yearning without despair. Virtue consort may request plum blossom undertone. The Empress Dowager demands sandalwood authority. Scholars recommend hint of chrysanthemum for scholarly gravitas. And astrologers insist musk tianchi to appease metal your stars. Combine wrong, create chaos. Combine right, maybe peace. You consult Master Lin, ancient nose of the storeroom. He sniffs requests and chuckles, toothless. Balance desire and fear. Always equal parts. Together you grind resins, fold smoke into silvered paper coils, label boxes, ambition, harmony, fertile silence. You lock them in cedar chests, seal with crimson ribbon, and pray flames obey. Twilight pours liquid gold over vermilion tiles. In the pavilion of reflected moons, tables gleam, musicians pluck final chords of Autumn River, and eunuchs glide carrying lacquered trays of lotus wine. You position censers precisely, sandalwood nearest throne, plum blossom flanking May, chrysanthemum circling scholar seats, musk hidden like a secret at pavilion's heart. The emperor arrives, robes shimmering in lantern glow. Beside him, the Empress Dowager, eyes sharper than jade chisels. Consorts bow, ministers bow deeper, you bow deepest, retreat behind lattice screens where eunuchs manage airflow like battlefield tacticians. Music begins, lutes sigh, flutes mourn, zither yearn. Sense spirals upward, invisible choreography weaving diplomacy. May's gaze lifts when plum blossom drifts, the emperor's shoulders ease under wood's calm. Scholars debate couplets, nostrils flaring appreciatively at chrysanthemum clarity. Even the crown prince looks almost human, sipping wine rather than spilling it. You exhale relief, until a wind gust barrels through open courtyard doors. Lanterns flicker, musk coil flares, releasing thick ribbon of scent too potent, too sudden. Guests cough, emperor waves sleeve. An omen? Dowager's eyes narrow at you behind the lattice. Disaster knocks, eager for entry. Act fast. You snatch a sachet of powdered sandalwood, toss it into censer, dampening musk with measured authority. Simultaneously signal musicians, shift key from yearning to serene. The dissolves, smoke thins, tension melts like frost. Guests exclaim at the theatrical fragrance flourish. The dowager raises a brow, then nods, approval or warning, impossible to parse. Banquet concludes without revolt. Eunuchs clear dishes, poets slur new verses praising. Moon-kissed musk breeze. Your legs tremble, but your face remains stone. Survived. Again. Midnight debrief in incense hall. Overseer Lu congratulates you with rare half-smile. Skillful recovery. The emperor enjoyed the drama. He hands you a scroll bearing red dragon seal. Imperial commendation and stipend increase. Rest. Tomorrow the world resets. You leave, stipend sealed inside robe, heart hammering. In corridor shadows, Eunuch Zhao appears, whispering. Crown Prince asks for a personal tutor in incense arts. He named you. Opportunity or snare? You nod warily. Zhao adds. He liked the moon-kissed musk. Said it matched his latest poem about lonely sovereignty. You file new dread under future problems. Back at quarters, Ming, free, bruised, adoring, presses a stolen honey cake into your hand. You saved me. I'll follow you anywhere. You laugh quietly. Loyalty in this city evaporates faster than jasmine smoke. Still, you share the cake, honey stinging your flogged back like sweet salt. Lights out. You lie on mat, muscles humming pain and possibility. From distant rooftops, bronze bells toll second watch. You think of Sue in chains, Lu orchestrating, maid plotting, the dowager watching, and yourself, fawn, eunuch, survivor, dancing between dragon claws with nothing but incense cones and calculated honesty. One last breath before sleep, plum blossom hope, sandalwood resolve, chrysanthemum clarity, musk, edge of danger. You tuck them into lungs, whisper creed, endure. Tonight, endurance tastes almost like victory. Imagine living in a world where locking eyes across a courtyard could get you married, exiled, or politely executed, all before the kimchi ferments. Welcome to Joseon-era Korea, where flirting is a full-contact mind sport, minus the contact, and your only equipment is a flimsy fan, an encyclopedic knowledge of Confucian etiquette, and nerves strong enough to withstand 12 layers of silk. It is the year of the metal tiger, somewhere between sunrise and social suffocation, and you are Xianhua, 17, third daughter of a mid-level Yangban bureaucrat who drafts royal edicts no one reads. Your morning begins in the women's quarters, which smell like cedar, charcoal, and ambition. A chirping servant slides open the lattice doors and bows so low her forehead auditions for a floor tile. She announces today's mission: accompany your older sister Unjiang to the capital's Lotus Pond Pavilion for the most aggressively wholesome social gathering ever invented, a poetry contest supervised by the royal inspector's wife. Translation: a singles mixer where eye contact substitutes for Tinder swipes and every syllable of verse can reroute your horoscope. First, the wardrobe gauntlet. A 5-layer jaggery in muted persimmon is draped over your shoulders, followed by a high-waisted chima skirt dyed the color of unasked questions. The family's resident and/fashion dictator yanks the crimson naragi tassel until your lungs fold neatly in half. She then slips a tiny sachet of crushed mugwort into your sleeve, an olfactory shield against sweat and scandal. You bow, grateful or at least oxygen deprived, while she lectures on proper flirtation posture, shoulders back, chin at a pious 30-degree angle, and hands clasped like you're secretly strangling regret. Breakfast appears, a bowl of rice gruel so bland it whispers motivational poetry about embracing emptiness. Beside it, 3 pickled radish slices shaped like crescent moons, because lunar symbolism makes malnutrition chic. You chew gracefully, mindful that excessive mastication is frowned upon. Joseon etiquette manuals warn that audible enthusiasm for food is the mating call of barbarians. Travel to the pavilion involves an ox cart disguised as a privacy coffin. The wooden shutters are latticed just wide enough to glimpse startled pedestrians diving out of your path. Your sister Eunjong sits opposite, perfecting her serene lotus expression, which looks suspiciously like low blood sugar delirium. She murmurs a practice haiku. Lotus petals drift / whispering forbidden thoughts / hush, Confucius sighs. You nod approvingly, mentally bookmarking it for later plagiarism. Arrival. The Lotus Pond Pavilion gleams in lacquered indifference. Built by a king who believed nature should pay rent, it floats on carved stone turtles that supposedly guarantee moral stability. Courtyard flagstones are swept so clean they reflect the sky, and your future mother-in-law's disapproval. Dozens of young gentlewomen shuffle about like pastel-colored chess pieces, each flanked by chaperones armed with gossip and prayer beads. Across the pond, coiffed gentlemen pretend to admire fish while actually ranking dowry prospects by Naragi sparkle. A zither echoes through the willows, strumming nerves into titropes. The contest commences. Participants must compose a Seijo verse about tranquil virtue, which is hilarious, considering the collective hormonal riot simmering beneath every silk sleeve. You kneel on a woven mat, brush poised, heart-drumming taiko rhythms. Quick calculation, mention bamboo for resilience, moonlight for chastity, and maybe a hawk for edgy intrigue. Your calligraphy spills onto rice paper, strokes bold but not arrogantly so. Nearby, your sister writes with the precision of an accountant balancing karma. A judge collects the sheets, expression blank as unflavored tofu, and retreats to the pavilion's shadowy interior for deliberation. Intermission, social mingling, which in Joseon means pretending not to mingle while aggressively strategizing glances. Here begins the fan warfare. Your mother pressed into your hand a pearwood fan painted with cranes, auspicious and aerodynamic. Rule 1. Closed fan clasped in both hands signals modesty. Rule 2. Half-open fan held at chin level implies cautious interest. Rule 3. Fully open fan angle just so suggests. I might let you watch me read Confucian classics, but only if your lineage tree bears persimmons. You test the half-open maneuver, tilting the edge until your eyes align with a bookish scholar across the Koi Bridge. He's handsome in a dehydrated sort of way. High cheekbones, ink-stained fingertips, the aura of someone who's argued footnotes with ghosts. He notices your fan's angle, blinks twice, surprised, then lifts his own fan, a plain paper model covered in what appears to be multiplication tables. Nerd romance confirmed. He responds with a subtle wrist twist, 90 degrees right, meaning, I acknowledge your existence but remain philosophically aloof. You counter by tapping the fan's rivet lightly, code 4. Your aloofness is noted and potentially adorable. Your chaperone clears her throat like distant thunder, snapping both of you back to orthodoxy. As the afternoon swelters, the judge emerges to announce winners. Third place. A verse about pine trees enduring frost. Yawn. Second, your sister's moonlit lotus line. Predictably elegant. First place. An unexpected poem from Lady Hyan, the governor's cousin, comparing virtuous women to secret libraries housing forbidden scrolls. Gasps ripple. It's borderline racy. She wins because everyone's too shocked to protest, and the judge wants plausible deniability. Proper applause ensues, polite, fingertip only, like clapping for a cat funeral. Prizes distributed, conversation shifts to archery demonstration, because nothing says wholesome courtship like shooting phallic projectiles near waterfowl. Gentlemen approach the range first, flexing scholarly biceps. The bookish scholar, you overhear his name is Min Seo-jun, draws the bow with surprising competence. loosing an arrow that thunks dead center. Applause. He pretends humility, fan folded behind his back, eyes sliding toward you for a microsecond. Your pulse writes fanfiction across your ribs. Now the women may try, purely for entertainment. You step forward, ignoring your chaperone's mouth forming the word. Unladylike. The bow is taller than your self-esteem, the string taut as gossip. You remember your cousin's secret lesson, focus on breath, not outcome. Draw, aim toward a modest target, release. Arrow lands close enough to impress without emasculating. Courtyard erupts in startled appreciation. Min Seo-jun's eyebrows perform a standing ovation. Scandal threat level rises. A maid whispers that Lady Hyen fainted from sunstroke, a polite euphemism for craving attention. Attendants rush her to a shaded veranda, reminding everyone that delicate constitutions are prized commodities. You, freshly empowered by archery, are now balanced on a razor between admiration and impropriety. Late afternoon tea follows, served in porcelain cups so thin they tremble at existential inconvenience. Pouring sequence matters, elders first, potential suitors last. You kneel beside Eun-jong, who whispers that a royal inspector's nephew expressed interest in her dowry ledger. You sip barley tea, eyes scanning. Seo-jun approaches, guided by an elderly aunt the way a falconer leads a hawk. He bows to your group, compliments your archery with phrasing so formal it might be satire. Your arrow flew straight, guided by filial piety. Translation: nice shot, let's exchange annotated poetry. You thank him with a fan dip, careful not to spill tea or grandmotherly approval. Conversation skirts politics, hovers over agriculture, safe, then lands on the color of autumn persimmons, an acceptable code topic for courtship. Seo-jun quotes a line from his favorite Ming Dynasty essay. You parry with a reference to Silera folk songs. The intellectual volley impresses nearby matrons. One discreetly waves her soy-glazed rice cake in blessing. Dusk paints the sky in hanbok pastels. Escorts gather. Before departing, Seo-jun slips a folded silk bookmark into your servant's hand, intended for you. Inside, an original Seijo. Spring fan hide smiles / rustling pages turn to breath / meet me where owls dream. Bold. Risky. Absolutely keeper material. Your chaperone will incinerate it if caught. So you memorize the lines in 2 heartbeats, then hide the silk beneath your sleeve sachet, between mugwort and rebellion. The ox cart ride home shakes loose every nerve. Eun-jong grills you for details. You feign drowsiness. Back at the manor, lanterns glow like patient interrogators. You kneel before Mother for debrief. She notes your intact Naraigi, your modest fan angles, and your sister's second-place scroll. Approval granted barely. You bow, retreat to the women's quarters, unpin hair that smells of lily and latent anarchy, and replay each flirtatious code like a general mapping sieges. Night deepens. You lie on the floor mattress, clutching the bookmark under your pillow. Fireflies pulse outside the paper windows, Morse coding encouragement. Tomorrow's schedule: calligraphy, silk dyeing, pretending you don't daydream of archery duels and moonlit libraries with Seo-jun. For now, you whisper the Seijo back to the dark, savoring syllables like forbidden plum wine. In Joseon, Korea, flirting isn't a pastime. It's an act of intellectual guerrilla warfare fought between fans and fortifications of etiquette. You have survived your first skirmish. Sleep tight. History's most delicate love story just sharpened its quills. Dawn whistles itself awake with a rooster that clearly skipped rehearsal, and the women's quarters explode into crisis mode when Mother announces a surprise embroidery inspection by grandmother. This is not about silk quality. It's a stealth evaluation of marital worth. A crooked crane stitch means you're unfit for polite society. A misplaced lotus basically cancels your future children. While Eun-jong hyperventilates over uneven thread tension, you cling to consciousness by reciting Min Seo-jun's Midnight Seijo like a charm against generational disappointment. The inspection mercifully ends with Mother declaring the work acceptable, given limited talent. which in Yangban speech translates to, "No one has to enter a convent yet." Spirits briefly lift. Then a courier arrives bearing a crimson-sealed invitation addressed to Father. The royal inspector's household will host a full moon lantern soiree on the palace lake tomorrow night. Families of good repute are welcome to attend, provided daughters exhibit quiet grace, sons recite poetry, and no one embarrasses the dynasty. In other words, it's a second-round draft pick of eligible heirs, and you just made the playoffs. Preparations begin before lunch. Aunt Fashion Dictator produces a sky-blue hanbok with white piping so sharp it could trim hedges. She tightens your naragi until your torso achieves the circumference of a determined pine sapling, then adds a silver hairpin shaped like a phoenix. Clearly overkill for a sophomore flirter, but she insists weaponized symbolism is crucial. Meanwhile, Eunjong receives a pale green ensemble, so she won't overshadow her sister, which in family dialect sounds supportive but is actually coded sabotage. Afternoon lessons proceed under the oppressive gaze of Tutor Park, an ex-monk who treats metaphors like live grenades. Today he drills you on Confucian virtue quotes, likely to impress nosy uncles at the soiree. Halfway through, benevolence begins with the correction of the heart. A maid slips a folded paper crayon onto your inkstone. Inside, Seojun's neat characters. Library garden, sunset, bring your best counterargument. Your pulse invents jazz drumming. Tutor Park notices the redness in your cheeks, assumes you've achieved enlightenment, and rewards the class with a break. Sunset bleeds over the estate walls as you slip to the family library garden. There, amid persimmon trees and mosquitoes auditioning for opera, waits Seojun in scholar blue robes, flanked by a single servant pretending to catalog leaves. He bows, you bow. Both chaperones bow and rotate 180 degrees like wind-up guardians, granting the illusion of privacy while memorizing every syllable for future gossip. Seojun produces 2 fans. One is paper, covered in multiplication tables, his lucky charm. The other is blank silk. He offers the blank one along with a brush and travel ink. "Write me a question no teacher has answered," he says. The audacity jolts through your spine. This is flirtation as intellectual duel. You ink 3 characters. "Where hides sincerity?" and hand it back. He reads, smiles, then writes beneath. "Between breaths." The servant coughs, clearly scandalized by metaphysical banter. You exchange one more bow, then scatter in opposite directions before propriety collapses. That night, Eunjong steams your face with mugwort water while interrogating you about Seojun. You deflect with vague comments about his penmanship. She rolls her eyes and predicts he'll bore you within a month. You secretly hope to be bored senseless. Morning of the lantern fete arrives draped in monsoon humidity. Servants polish every wooden buckle on the ox cart, though no amount of lacquer can hide its resemblance to portable claustrophobia. The ride to the palace lake is a jostling meditation on spinal integrity. Father rehearses his humble yet competent smile. Mother reviews family lineage trivia in case nobles quiz her like a walking genealogy scroll. The lake's marble pier glitters with oil lamps and social tension. Paper lanterns bob on water, each painted with poems or prayers that will drift until they disintegrate. Joseon's version of unread emails. Musicians pluck gaegeum strings that sound like shy raindrops. Young men in ink-black hats stand in clusters pretending the humidity doesn't exist. Chaperones form a perimeter thicker than palace walls. This is not a party. It's a civil service examination disguised as mood lighting. Fan choreography commences instantly. A girl from a rival clan flashes a quick flip. Open, shut, open, broadcasting that her dowry now includes a second rice paddy. Another uses a feathered fan to imply literary refinement but mostly resembles a startled rooster. You maintain the half-open, chin-height pose, interested yet inscrutable. Mother nods approvingly. You upgrade to a delicate wrist flick when Seojun approaches carrying a lantern painted with crayons and calla lilies. Subtle message: purity in flight meets poisonous beauty. Poetry or warning, you're not sure. He bows. You reciprocate. His aunt appears to administer small talk triage. Weather, harvest prospects, the king's new irrigation edict. After safe subjects are exhausted, she drifts toward the snack table, leaving a regulation gap of 3 paces. Seojun leans in half a syllable closer and whispers, "Would you launch a lantern with me? Confucius allowed joint virtue, I think." Your chaperone's eyebrows nearly puncture her forehead, but father, who notices everything, coughs in what you interpret as provisional consent. Together you kneel at the water's edge. Seojun lights the candle inside the crane and Kala lantern while you steady the frame. The flame illuminates his face, revealing sweat beads and terrifying sincerity. He clears his throat. "I added a verse," he recites softly. "Moonlit ripples speak / we share a single reflection / may tides guard our vow." Vow? The word detonates inside your skull. It's technically a proposal teaser, swift, weaponized, and delivered in haiku armor. You can't reply without witnesses turning into deposition stenographers, so you let the lantern go. It drifts, carrying verse and questions into black water. Polite applause breaks out behind you. Apparently the poetical hush drew spectators. Lady Hyen, the scandalous library metaphor champion, steps forward with a smirk. She praises your elegant collaboration, then casually opens her peony-painted fan at the secret. Challenge accepted. Angle aimed at Seojun. Duel declared. Her social status dwarfs yours. Her family's library surpasses yours by 10,000 scrolls and a rumored jade-inlaid desk. She saunters off, mission complete. Inject jealousy, exit stage left. Back at the pavilion, anxiety condenses on every silk surface. The royal inspector's wife announces a riddling contest, winner to receive a jade hairpin, symbolizing clarity. Translation: whichever girl solves the riddle showcases both intelligence and virtue, leaping to the top of the marriage leaderboard. The riddle: I have a face but speak no words. I mark moments yet flee with winds. What am I? Whispers swirl like startled swallows. Some say sundial, others, water clock. Lady Hyen steps forward, proclaims, "A shadow," and bows smugly. Murmurs approve, even Mother looks resigned. But Tudor Park's metaphors detonate in your memory. The true measure of time is the heart corrected. You step forward, pulse jackhammering, and answer. A fallen blossom on a stream. It bears spring's face, drifts with each breeze, and is gone before we can greet it. The crowd gasps. The inspector's wife's eyes glimmer. She declares both answers worthy but awards the jade pin to you for capturing impermanence with suitable melancholy. Lady Hyen's smile cracks like overbaked porcelain. Victory tastes like ginseng and terror. Chaperones rearrange social orbits. Father beams so wide his beard nearly unravels. Seojun bows with admiration that makes your phoenix hairpin feel suddenly earned, not inherited. Lady Hyen orchestrates strategic retreat toward a cluster of distant cousins, plotting your theatrical demise. A drumroll signals final event, the lantern release. Hundreds of glowing orbs set sail across the lake, reflecting constellations both celestial and parental expectations shaped. You and Seojun stand at the pier edge, fans closed in mutual ceasefire. He whispers, "Your blossom answer was terrifyingly beautiful." You reply, "Your vow verse was alarmingly bold." You both laugh, a sound almost modern in its uncensored warmth, and for 3 heartbeats the palace architecture forgets to scold you. Inevitably, the spell breaks. Palace curfew bells toll, ox carts queue. On the return journey, Mother clutches the jade pin like a lottery ticket while strategizing dowry upgrades. Father hums folk tunes usually reserved for rice wine nights. Eunjong pretends indifference but secretly counts how many cousins witnessed your triumph. At home, lanterns are extinguished one by one until only moonlight leaks through the lattice. You unpin the phoenix, loosen the naraigi, and hide the jade pin inside a pillow stuffed with buckwheat and conspiracy. Sleep threatens, but Lady Hyan's broken smile haunts the darkness. You know tomorrow she'll release rumor hounds. Perhaps your blossom answer was plagiarized, or your hanbok color secretly mournful. Courtship is polite warfare. Casualties include reputation and bedtime peace. You pull the blank silk fan from a wooden chest, trace fingertips over the inked question and answer. Sincerity hiding between breaths. Seojun found it first. You inhale, count to 3, and feel your heartbeat graffiti bold lines across the ribs again. Somewhere beyond the courtyard wall, a nightingale sings with reckless volume, ignoring every Confucian noise ordinance. In Joseon, Korea, flirting thrives not in grand gestures but in tiny fractures of protocol. Tonight you cracked the lacquer, and moonlight rushed in. Morning returns like a judgmental ant, and with it, the fallout. You're awoken not by the rooster, he's given up entirely, but by the sound of whispers. Sharp ones. Servants ferrying gossip like it's medicinal tea, bitter, and meant to purge dignity. The rumor? Your blossom metaphor was suspiciously poetic. Possibly lifted from a Ming Dynasty scroll. Or worse, inspired by fiction. Your social standing teeters on the edge of literary fraud. Lady Hyan's influence works faster than typhoid at a summer festival. Mother calls a family emergency tea. No one drinks. Father clears his throat and says, "We must be vigilant. That girl has cousins in record keeping." You don't ask what that means, you just nod like a Confucian disciple mid-crisis. Eunjong, to her credit, doesn't gloat. But she does mention cheese. Always preferred chrysanthemums to blossoms anyway. Before your name can rot like uneaten rice, Mother crafts a plan. Spiritual atonement. Nothing redeems poetic scandal faster than temple volunteering. Which is how you find yourself, 3 hours later barefoot, scrubbing temple steps with a rice straw brush that looks like a rejected eyebrow tool. The abbess greets you with the warmth of a stone lantern. "Scrub not just the floor, but your attachments," she says, smiling in the way that feels like homework. You spend the day hunched, gritty, and possibly holy. Every few minutes a monk passes by, complimenting your form. Not your cleaning form, your posture. Apparently you've entered a flirtation feedback loop even while doing penance. At sunset, as you rinse your hands in a bamboo basin, Seojun appears behind you like a subplot. "I thought atonement was supposed to bring clarity," he says, eyeing your bruised knuckles. You glance around for chaperones. Just a turtle and a bird that's been watching you like it's about to file a report. "You inspired a minor diplomatic incident," you say. "Congratulations." He bows with mock humility. "They say imitation is flattery. But accusation? That's true affection." You try not to smile. You fail. He produces a folded paper fan. This one's painted. A crane flying with a broken wing. Beneath it, his initials, tiny and smudged. "For your next riddle," he says. "What survives, flight or fall?" Before you can answer, the abbess calls you back. Duty before wit. You leave him standing in the incense smoke like a misplaced ghost. Temple life continues for 2 more days, during which your knees forget joy and your sandals commit murder on your heels. By the time you return home, your hands are raw, your posture is perfect, and your name, miraculously, has been cleared. Grandmother announces that she overheard someone important calling you. Authentically tragic, which is peak courtship currency. The social calendar retaliates with a new horror, a family-hosted poetry recital. This time, you're not just a participant, you're the main attraction. Mother insists it must be a showcase of modest excellence. Translation: no bold metaphors, no haiku duels, and definitely no flirting disguised as similes. You're to recite something safe. Something that won't start a dynasty-wide debate. You write 3 verses about clouds. Then another about a pebble. Then delete them all and write a poem about waiting. You perform it on the garden stage, flanked by candlelight and dread. The guests murmur approvingly. A few noble boys nod sagely. Lady Hyen, seated beneath the willow like some tragic opera heroine, offers a single clap, slow and slicing. And then Seojun steps forward. Everyone freezes. He's not on the program. He's not even holding a scroll. He bows, clears his throat, and says, "I have only one verse. But it belongs here." And then, even the moon waits / when clouds bloom with her reflection, / some light is patient. The silence is louder than the applause. Lady Hyen's fan snaps shut so hard a nearby dog barks. The abbess, somehow in the audience now, tilts her head in approval like she's witnessing karmic balance being restored. That night, Father calls Seojun, bold to the point of foolish, which, in our house, is 1 degree short of asking for a formal proposal. Things escalate quickly. Mother begins calculating dowries with the same energy she usually reserves for illness prevention. She makes 3 appointments with the neighborhood matchmaker, reorders your handbox by seasonal symbolism, and bans all metaphors involving birds, just in case. Meanwhile, Seojun sends you a single magnolia flower via his servant. It has no note, just a folded fan with 1 word painted inside. Ready? You hide it in your book of Confucian maxims, between "Silence is the ornament of virtue" and "Restraint bears fruit in time." Irony tastes like plum vinegar. Then, of course, disaster strikes. The palace announces an unexpected inspection of all eligible noble households. A new protocol: family libraries are to be evaluated for proper moral texts, literary worth, and crucially, evidence of forbidden fiction. Fiction is not technically illegal, but it's associated with dangerous ideas like imagination, empathy, and romantic independence. You know, sedition. And what does your household library contain? Oh, just 4 shelves of ancient epics, 1 scroll that may or may not be about reincarnated dear lovers, and a suspicious stack of courtly dramas involving cross-dressing heroines and forbidden elopements. Panic detonates. Father orders an emergency reorganization. Unjong and you spend the entire night swapping suggestive titles with boring Confucian essays. Lady Hyen's cousin, conveniently close with the inspector's assistant, begins circulating questions about whether your recent poem included veiled references to Taoist love spells. By dawn, you've burned 2 scrolls, cried once, and hidden your favorite story, a handwritten tale of a time-traveling Joseon, in the bottom of a rice jar. When the inspector arrives, everything smells like ink and sweat. He's unimpressed by your family's book collection. Declares your hanbok colors ambitious for this time of year. Asks whether poetic outbursts are common among the daughters. Father replies with a 12-minute quote from Mencius. It doesn't help. Just when the tension threatens to snap, Seojun appears, uninvited, holding a commentary scroll on filial piety and the names of 3 previous generations of his own family's civil service records. He bows deeply, hands the scroll to the inspector, and says, "In support of their household's scholarly lineage, I offer proof of shared mentorship and mutual literary integrity." In short, he vouches for you. Publicly. With paper. It's the Joseon equivalent of catching a grenade and writing a respectful letter about it afterward. The inspector accepts. He leaves. No one breathes until the gate closes. Your mother cries. Your father opens rice wine. You sit beside Unjong and stare at the sky. Later, alone in the moonlight, you open your fan, write 2 new words beneath his "almost," and drift to sleep with the strange knowledge that flirting in Joseon Korea might involve metaphors, censorship, and terrifying subtlety. But when it works, it sings like wine through silk. The morning after the library inquisition smells strangely like hope, a scent somewhere between newly pressed rice paper and the faint jasmine oil mother reserved for spiritual emergencies. Grandmother calls for ceremonial rice cakes to celebrate surviving bureaucratic extinction, but the family cook discovers the rice flour barrel empty because someone, probably Unjong's secret midnight snack habit, miscalculated. We offer the last 2 persimmons instead, slice them into 7 shares, and pretend frugality is a virtue rather than evidence of pantry collapse. Your father dispatches a messenger to Seojun's household with gratitude so flowery even chrysanthemums would blush. An answer arrives within the hour. Seojun's parents wish to pay a formal call this afternoon. Cue hurricane. Mother detonates into chore artillery. Polish the wooden veranda, dust ancestral tablets, re-steam every hanbok in chromatic order. And fashion dictator seizes you like a mannequin under indictment, declaring today's theme, demure triumph. She selects a hanbok of pale moon blue and an aragi carved from white jade. The phoenix hairpin remains, but she swaps the tassel for silver threads. To signal modest ascendancy. Translation, glow quietly. Meanwhile, whispers reach you through servant grapevines. Lady Hyen hasn't surrendered. Rumor says she's secured a private audience with the royal inspector's wife, armed with allegations that your family employs Taoist rituals to boost marital prospects. Allegations in Joseon Korea function like mold, apply moisture, gossip, and they bloom overnight. Mother instructs the gatekeeper to deny entry to anyone carrying suspicious talismans or, worse, gift baskets from Lady Hyen. Mid-afternoon, thunder growls in the distance even though the sky remains imperial blue. Seojun's entourage arrives, parents, 2 aunts, 1 uncle, and a servant staggering under the weight of a lacquer chest. Inside, ginseng roots thick as destiny, bolts of rami cloth, and a porcelain inkstone set rumored to have belonged to a Silla poet. These are preliminary tokens of goodwill, meaning the pre-dowry before the real dowry even whispers its price tag. Formal bows follow, deep, slow, each one an earthquake of protocol. Your father reads a prepared thank you note, peppered with enough self-deprecation to season 5 generations. Seojun's father counters with a speech lauding shared scholarly rigor, and the harmonious clouds of the younger generation. You and Seojun kneel opposite each other, eyes fixed respectfully on floorboards yet somehow meeting every time reflections in polished lacquer align. It's a clandestine dance of eyelashes. Tea service commences. You pour chrysanthemum infusion into porcelain cups so thin they ring like bells. Seojun receives his cup last, lifting it with 2 hands, as etiquette dictates, but before sipping, he flips the saucer subtly, revealing a crane motif that matches the broken wing fan he'd gifted. Message received. Promises remain aloft even when wings are fractured. You respond by placing your cup atop the saucer at a mirrored angle, acknowledging shared flight. An elderly aunt notices, smiles behind her sleeve, and pretends cataracts excuse her amusement. Negotiations glide forward until lightning cracks overhead, and Lady Hyen storms through the outer gate beneath a silk umbrella the size of political ambition. Servants failed to intercept, her gift basket disguised as rainfall assistance. She waltzes into the greeting hall without waiting for invitation, bows so deeply she nearly kisses the floor, then produces a scroll tied in crimson. She claims it's evidence of your family's heretical storytelling, an anonymous manuscript of romantic fiction, allegedly penned by you. Gasps erupt. The adults freeze. You recognize the scroll, your hidden tale of a time-traveling Joseon, the one you buried in the rice jar. Treachery fermented faster than kimchi. The royal inspector's wife, who has conveniently accompanied Lady Hyen, steps forward to examine the scroll. Your heart script flips. Exposure could nullify negotiations, brand you morally reckless, maybe exile your household to the provinces where even poetry grows mold. But Seojun intercepts. He bows to the inspector's wife and requests permission to authenticate the handwriting. She allows. He opens the scroll, studies 2 lines, one about a moondrunk palace cat, then smiles politely. This script, he announces, belongs to my cousin Hongjin. He misplaced several drafts of his fanciful tales last month. We feared they'd fallen into unscrupulous hands. He turns, bowing to Lady Hyen with surgical courtesy. It appears he was correct. Silence detonates softer than fireworks but louder than thunder. Lady Hyan's face blanches the color of unpolished rice. She stammers something about anonymous acquisitions. The inspector's wife narrows her eyes, folding the scrolls shut like it bid her. Your father steps in, offering respectful condolence that Lady Hyan was misled by counterfeit literature. Seo Jun's father requests the scroll be returned to its rightful owner, promising to chastise cousin Hongjin for careless genius. The crisis wilts. Lady Hyan bows, claiming sudden dizziness. The inspector's wife, reputation intact but curiosity piqued, excuses herself to review other households. Lady Hyan departs with her entourage, umbrella drooping like defeated plum blossom. Rain finally bursts, drumming relief onto roof tiles. Negotiations resume while servants light lanterns for gloom. Minutes stretch, tea cools, thunder rolls away. At last, the fathers exchange final bows and set a date for official betrothal rites at the next full moon. When the adults disperse to draft engagement paperwork, Seo Jun approaches you beneath the eaves where rain spatters into stone basins. You keep writing worlds, he says softly. I'll keep guarding entrances. You laugh despite tremor. Your cousin Hongjin will hate me. He'll thank you, Seo Jun shrugs. His stories just saved us. You reach into your sleeve, withdraw the phoenix hairpin, and slide it into his palm. A talisman, you whisper, for fractured wings. He tucks it behind his belt knot, dangerously sentimental, and produces a slim book wrapped in linen. Alex, the cover claims, but when you open it later in candlelight, you'll find blank pages ready for fresh rebellions. The betrothal fortnight passes in a blur of sewing needles, incense offerings, and etiquette rehearsals sharp enough to slice syllables. Grandmother coaches you on wifely comportment. Smile seldom, praise tea often. Father drills you on family history to recite at the ceremony. Mother oversees dowry items, silk quilts embroidered with cranes, brass mirrors, and the jade pin now sewn onto a sash as auspicious accident prevention. On the eve of the ceremony, Eunjong slips into your room with contraband honey cakes, confesses she envies your courage, then warns that Lady Hyan's family may attempt a final disruption. You nod, mouth full of sticky rebellion, and promise not to die before breakfast. Ceremony day dawns ritual clear. You dress in bridal reds layered over white underrobes, symbolizing blooming virtue rising from purity. The phoenix hairpin returns. Seo Jun's servant delivered it at sunrise, tied with a thread of silver and a note. Wings mended. Inside the ancestral shrine courtyard, drums pulse slow and foreboding. You walk the path of woven straw mats, sandals whispering secrets to earth. Seo Jun awaits at the altar platform, dressed in scholar black robes edged with sapphire. His hat crest bears the faint crane emblem of mutual conspiracy. Vows proceed. Bow to heaven, bow to ancestors, bow to each other 3 times, each deeper until your foreheads nearly meet the ground. During the wine sharing, a servant trips, splashing a scarlet drop onto your sleeve. The crowd inhales. The omen could sour fortune. Without hesitation, Seo Jun flips his own sleeve over the stain, merging colors. The officiant smiles. Dual burdens, dual blessings. Crisis transformed. After final rites, you and Seo Jun retreat to the inner garden pavilion for the traditional first conversation as betrothed. Chaperones hover at approved eavesdropping distance. Rain-washed air carries chrysanthemum scent. You unfold your blank-paged Analects, dip a brush, and write. Flight survives, he adds beneath. Only alongside another wing. Outside, Lady Hyan reportedly faints upon hearing the union completed without scandal. Eunjong comforts her, perhaps too enthusiastically, while father negotiates celebratory tax exemptions with grateful officials. That night, lanterns blaze across rooftops, fireflies jealous of fabricated constellations. You peel off ceremonial layers, slide the jade pin into a silk pouch, and finally open the notebook to its first real page. Brush poised, You realize flirting in Joseon Korea was never merely survival. It was authorship, of rumors, of futures, of fragile revolutions folded inside fans. You begin to write, allowing the ink to flow like moonlit ripples. Some light is patient, and some stories, though composed in whispers, echo for centuries. The fan by your side snaps shut with satisfying finality. In the hush before dawn's next judgmental ant arrives, you and Seojun breathe the same air, each exhale a vow to guard the story you now share, one fluttered glance and folded fan at a time.